Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. Huge shout out and special thanks to the channel members. The series starts with a man telling the president that the national address will begin in 1 minute, and he looks down at his watch asking if it's been that long already, and his assistant tells him that power will be restored to the entire country very soon. The president stands up, and puts his arms together staring directly at the camera, and he greets himself as the president named Jang Won-tek, saying that before he begins he has a request to make, and they need to ensure that everyone around them is watching the broadcast, because as many citizens as possible need to see this. He is being told that the people meter ratings are skyrocketing, and it hasn't even been a minute, and he knows that they must have been greatly distressed by the lockdown, and he sincerely thanks them for their cooperation. He has declared a state of emergency martial law on July 16th, and the army has taken control of media outlets, and national infrastructure, and tons of major roads have been closed. They must all be wanting to know why. He asks his assistant Lee if he has a cigarette, and his assistant jokes saying the opposition party members are going to use this against him. We see his hand shaking, and he explains now why he declared martial law, and he exhales the smoke saying that it's because he wants them all to face a dignified end. Now they must all know the scenario from the game Survival Life is happening in reality, and the asteroid from that game Yun Zombie is real. According to the reports that came at dawn, the military has failed to intercept it, and as a result the asteroid ultimately crashed into the sea near Okinawa, and it has been confirmed to have caused catastrophic damage, and regrettably the people of Japan have all been turned into zombies. It's due to the spores originating from the asteroid, but sadly it seems that the pathogens will make landfall in their country today, and that they cannot avoid this apocalypse. From what they've gathered, it seems a small number of people including the awakened may be immune to zombification, and so he has prepared something for them, and for safety reasons they will be open 1 year from now, but he has installed time shelters at the marked locations, and hopes that everyone can make their way there. He then gives them a guide on how to deal with the monsters that appear in the early stages, and all of this information will be distributed again via flyers dropped from airplanes. Soon all thermal power plants will shut down, and he is a man of many shortcomings, but he believes he has done what was necessary in their final moments, and he says that it has been an honor to be with them all, and hopes they can all meet again, and live well. He then goes to thank the anonymous informant who provided the exact D-Day date, but the television then gets cut out. A man sitting on his chair says that he really hoped the end wouldn't come, but since it's already here he's got to survive now, and he is a veteran of the apocalypse. We get a flashback to a few months ago, and a man asks his friend To if he is ready, and he says of course, and we learn that his name is Payak, and it turns out Payak's in-game name is Duckbutt. He says that if he loses today's bet he'll be on his third loss in a row, and his friend who is dressed crazy says that if he gets 3-0 he's basically a yellow bean. Another dude who is just as crazy, his name is Survivor 1, and we'll just call him 1, and he says that he keeps getting his kill stolen because he's trying to brute force it, asking another man if he's wrong, and he's meant to be Robin Hood, but he has a roll of Kimbop on his head, we'll call him Kimbop. Kimbop says that they're nothing without their flashy moves, and To as well is ready to rock their shit, and 1 says that he'll give them a 1-minute head start, and To says that he surely hopes he doesn't regret those words. This is all happening within the game Survival Life, and To and Payak charge into the horde. We learn more about how the game is just an apocalyptic game mixing zombies and fantasy monsters together, and it boasted an insane difficulty level that made even hardcore Korean gamers scared of touching it, and it shot to the top of the charts upon release, but that fame didn't last long, as it died not too long after release. After a whole year there's only 4 concurrent players, and they tell Kimbop to take the last hit, and he thanks them for the offer, and he draws back his bow, and launches it forward blowing a hole through the head. We learn that it's actually just a really shitty game apparently. After their little hunt we see the bet is over, they are now all chilling, one of them asks if they have anything else to play, and they tell him that if they did they wouldn't be out here making these stupid bets. One agrees saying that the game is so boring, but there's really nothing left to do, and Payak says that it wouldn't be weird if they shut down the servers today. One agrees, but To says that he needs some excitement, and dopamine, so he might just go gamble on Counter-Strike. Kimbop says that he told them they should take it slow, and 1 asks the group if they all want to play a different game, but To says that his body can't handle any of their games right now, to which Payak agrees. Kimbop tells them all to come check this shit out, and it's been a while since they've seen a message in chat. We see somebody named Noob asking if anybody is here, and he has the tag PC by his name, which means they were a genuine noob. Now the game has 5 concurrent players, and 1 jokes saying that the game is booming. Kimbop gives them the tutorial guide, and Noob thanks them saying that they're so nice, and he'll hit them up after they finish the tutorial. After 2 whole hours of them waiting patiently, Noob says that he can't believe this is the tutorial, but it's too hard, so he's going to give up. One starts to get frustrated, saying that they always quit in the end, and To says that they keep updating content, but they never thought about lowering the difficulty, and Payak agrees, saying that he has no idea what's going on in the devs' heads. One tells them that he's going to be logging off for the day, and he hopes they all have a good night, and Kimbop calls out to him asking if he'll be on again tomorrow, and One waits a second before saying probably. Kimbop says in that moment of silence he thinks that both To and Payak felt it as well, and they both logged out, saying that it's time to head back to real life, and that their journey has reached its end. He says that he hoped they'd join his stream, but he didn't want to let go. Even as other veterans logged in less, and less, he remained alone, but recorded update videos to enjoy the game with them, and he streamed day and night waiting for his friends to come back, and several months passed after that. The tutorial difficulty was drastically lowered, and the early game experience was improved, and in addition to the existing zombies and fantasy monsters, there were new mutated creatures appearing, and he welcomed the massive update, but his friends seemed to have lost interest, and didn't even log on anymore. And so the game ended up with just one concurrent player, which was Kimbop. He says this game is hopeless, and he might just quit at this rate, but someone reaches out to him telling him that they are from the operations team who made the game, and before their announcement they would just like to thank all of the users who have cherished survival life. Kimbop is surprised, saying that maybe they were just waiting for him to give up, and a giant monster begins screaming. Kimbop says he wanted to catch that one monster with his friends before he quit, but it was too bad. He hits the stop recording button, and takes off all of his gear, then he deletes the streaming account, his channel, and everything where he spent over 5,500 hours playing the game. But he couldn't bring himself to throw away the hard drive full of memories, so he shoved it into a storage closet. And then he, Kimbop, who we finally learn is named Kang Sung-ho, has now truly started living his life. His nickname is the Burnout Chef, and he's now working in a restaurant selling, you guessed it, kimbaps. The reason his ID was Kimbop in the first place was simple, and he's been running a snack shop for 3 years, and as you can see his business is pretty good. If you're wondering where he runs his business, it's on the first floor of the house he inherited after losing his parents in his second year of high school, and it's called Sung-ho's Tasty Snacks. He calls out to the customers telling them their food's ready, and a woman yells at him saying that business seems to be booming today, and her name is Mi Kyung. He hasn't been able to ask her for her last name, but she's a local hairdresser, and a regular customer, and it's no secret that he finds her hella pretty. She shows him her phone asking if he's seen this, and he asks what it is, and she says that apparently if they yell status window it'll pop up, and a lot of kids are talking about it. She tried it earlier, but sadly nothing came up for her. He laughs, saying there's no way that would actually happen, and that she's just too gullible. Later that night he stretches his hand out, and yells status window, and of course nothing happens at first, and he says that he knew it was too good to be true, but lightning starts to surge, and it appears. He says holy shit, that actually scared him, and we see he doesn't have a level or points, but his stats are there, and his trait is called Open Private Portal. He says that he feels like he's seen this somewhere before, and then he recognizes it as the status window from Survival Life. But it's a little different because that game didn't have the trait system, and he says the trait is a little lame, and he decides to test it out as he opens the portal. It appears in front of him, and he says this is sick, and it looks exactly like the labyrinth gate from the game. He wonders if this is really the game system, but says that can't be, and if that were real there'd at least be an article about Yoon Jambi or something, and he then looks for it, and holy shit there actually is. He starts panicking, saying that name could just be a coincidence, and it's too early to jump to conclusions, but what if it was real? And if it is really happening there might be some kind of proof instead of his portal. Sung-ho then tells himself to wait, as it's too dangerous to go in without a plan. After changing his mind he used a ladle, and stuck it at the bottom of the portal to see what was on the ground, and he pulled back dirt, saying that means that the other side isn't a labyrinth at least, and that this portal could just be something like a warp that teleports him somewhere on Earth. He makes some preparations, saying that it's time for him to go in, and we see him with a backpack packed with supplies. Once he enters he's surprised as what he sees is a beautiful landscape, and he wonders if this is real. He says the weather is a bit cold, and considering his phone has no signal he can assume this place is at least a very remote area that's hard for people to reach. He pulls out a marker, and starts drawing on the trees, saying that since there's no way to confirm where he is the most important thing is to find proof, so he should leave markers to guide himself back. As he heads down, and deeper into the forest he says the shit's killing him, wondering why it's so big, and he just prays that something shows up. We see eyes peering at him from the forest, and it leaps straight past him scaring him, and it's none other than a valley deer. He says that he recognizes the name plus the fact that a system window popped up means this place isn't Earth. The deer looks at him before running away, and he says it was staring so intensely he got scared for a second, but it doesn't seem to be an aggressive animal. But he hasn't found any proof of the apocalypse yet, and it'd be a different story if it were stone monkeys, or humped boars, as he's never seen a valley deer in the game, but he had a hunch from this moment on that this place was a space closely related to survival life, but he had to force himself to ignore it because he wanted to deny that a disaster was coming to humanity. But that hope was short-lived as he ended up finding exactly that. That's when he spots a golden tree with a sun apple, and he takes it off saying that it should be fine, and starts eating it. The status window tells him that his stamina has been slightly restored due to the effect of it, and a faint golden glow starts to surge around his body. He says the effect is exactly the same as the sun apple juice they sold in the game shop, and he laughs saying that this pretty much confirms it as he takes a seat. On top of that, there's also goblin shit, and he tells himself to accept it now, and that the end is coming. Having turned his sense of déjà vu into certainty, he immediately left the portal, and began to prepare. The first thing he did was take out the hard drive he'd stored away, and reviewed his early game footage, and he streamed and recorded all of his content because he really liked the game, and he can't believe he's going to have to use it just like this. According to the game, he has the date of when the asteroid hit, and he looks at his current date saying that there are 32 days left until the apocalypse. Looking at it again, the game was unfriendly, and full of annoying mechanics, and the most bullshit of them all was the Iron Death disease. It was a phenomenon that literally caused all metal to crumble away, and it would sweep through areas infested with zombie spores like an aftershock 5 hours later, instantly reverting human civilization back to the Stone Age. Of course, the Iron Death disease does subside depending on the region. The problem is that it takes anywhere from 6 months to a year. But this catastrophic Iron Death disease was meaningless to him now, since the trait he obtained is private portal, and it's just a hypothesis, but it shouldn't be able to pass through the portal. After finishing his initial analysis, he used the money he'd saved up, and bought all sorts of survival supplies such as weapons, food, tools, and medicine, as well as other things that he needed to be self-sufficient. He starts reading some chat boards wondering how they're all so carefree when they have status windows just like him. As soon as morning came, he bought tons of supplies, and on the way home he bought a 60-pound hunting bow, and then he had a thought on the way back that maybe he's just overreacting by himself. If it doesn't come, then it doesn't matter, and he'll just have to struggle for 2 or 3 years to earn back all of his money. But when he returned home, he decided to give it his all, and put up a sign telling everybody that the shop was temporarily closed for a few months for remodeling. He's still a bit confused on if he should do it or not, since this is practically just a decision he made overnight. Mi-kyung then calls out to him asking if he's really closing down the shop, and he says that's not it, he's just going to do some remodeling, and she says he must have made a lot of money then, and he tells her that the shop is just old, but he has something to do, so if she'll excuse him he'll be leaving. She calls out to stop him but doesn't have the courage to finish her sentence, and tells him that she'll see him later. He wonders what she was trying to say, and it was a situation where he could have easily asked, but he kept his mouth shut instead because there are more serious things that he needs to tend to. He opens the portal, and heads back inside. He says his gameplay style was that of a planner, and he divides detailed strategies to overcome challenges, and that's why among the veterans he lacked physical skill. If you're wondering why, it's because in the game stats aren't granted by leveling up, they are earned through the results of hunting and exploration. He sets up a target, and pulls back his bowstrings wondering if it will really work, and he says that it's a lot easier than he thought to draw. Bro is watching a YouTube tutorial on how to use a bow, and he listens to the guy, and readies his bow recalling how it felt to shoot inside the game, and releases his first shot hitting the target. He wonders if maybe he was a Legolas in his past life, saying that he can't believe he actually hit it first try, but he can only draw the string about 5 times at most right now because it tears into his hands, so starting today he's going to go hard on strength training. After he finished the basic prep, he moved on to the next stage. There are 2 things he needs to take care of. First is to figure out if he can hunt monsters as he is now, and second is to build a hideout where he can store his supplies. Of course, until the weapons and supplies he ordered arrive, he doesn't plan to do anything stupid like trying to overtake a nest, or anything else. He gets another sun apple, and he says that preparing for every situation for the future ahead was the reason he was able to remain a veteran in the game. He heads back to one of the markers, and looks around saying that he's sure it was around here until he finds it, and he made his way back to the goblin shit. He says the reason he specifically looked for the goblin dookie was simple. Goblins are monsters that originally live in groups, so a single pile was abnormal, and the fact that it's only seeds suggests it hasn't been eating properly, and there's a high chance it's been outcast from its group, so he has to find it no matter what it takes, as it's not often he gets a chance to test himself in a real fight. But as it gets dark he hears wolves howl, and says he must be getting closer to the valley. He then spots a goblin by a river, and he says that it looks really identical to the ones that he saw in the game. For reference, the goblins' main weapons are spears, and poison darts, and they enjoy incapacitating their opponents with poison, and tormenting them, and that was also the reason he chose a bow as his first weapon. He tells himself to stay calm, and says that it's an old goblin, and maybe because it was exiled it's not carrying a poison dart, or spear. His hands start trembling, and he tells himself that if he just remains calm he can hunt it. He fires the arrow, and the goblin turns hearing it be shot out, but blocks the attack using its arm, and starts screaming, and he says he was aiming for the head, but he's just glad he hit it. He should press the advantage, and go for more, but the goblin throws a rock knocking the bow out of his hands. He says the goblin must be a seasoned veteran as well, and he pulls out a blade, and the goblin pulls out its own makeshift knife, and they charge at one another. Their blades clash, and then Sung Ho rears his back, thrusting it forward towards the goblin's head. The goblin ducks underneath, and returns with a counter, hitting him in the leg. Sung Ho grits his teeth before tackling him down onto the ground, and he raises his knife into the air, and stabs it straight into the chest. The goblin tries to push him off but is too weak, and we see the life go out of its eyes. He acquires 2 points for doing this, and starts panting, saying he can't believe he actually did it. He then spots a little bag on the ground, saying this is guac powder, and vegetable oil, and in the game if you combine these two it became an ointment, so he might as well give it a try. He says he also needs to bury it so the other goblins don't find its corpse, but also so it doesn't turn into a bone creeper. Oh man. We back in the mine. He then spots the river, and red trout, and recognizes something, saying this is bad. He begins shaking in fear, as he turns around, meeting the eyes of a giant creature called the owlbear as it stares at him. He says he's in deep shit. We get a flashback to Sung Ho greeting everybody on one of his streams, and he says today he's going to continue from last time as he's compiled a summary of the monsters that inhabit the forest. People start flaming him, saying it's boring, and he tells them that he worked hard to prepare this material, and one of them named Bolsongman tells him that he thinks it'll be fun. Sung Ho thanks him for the donation, and Bolsongman says that it's not at all, it's just the money he made attaching his eyes to $1,000 today for his viewing fee. The banter goes back and forth, and one of the people named Dog keeps changing his name to fit the scenario, which is pretty funny. Sung Ho says last time they went over goblins and kobolds, and he explained that they must avoid the bone creeper at all cost, but the most dangerous things in the forest are werewolves and owlbears. In particular, the fact that an owlbear has established a territory means that the monster ecosystem is balanced. He says looking back these were the really good times, and Bolsongman was always enthusiastic, and Bapman always related stuff back to, you guessed it, kbap, which is a type of Korean food. He even mentions Dog, who changes his name in real time to make him laugh. He goes to explain how to fight an owlbear, but he wonders why he's thinking about past memories right now, and that this might be what people mention when they say their life flashes before their eyes. But he says at least for him this is more like a flashback from his old friends telling him to get a grip. He starts pinching his leg, telling himself to think. Owlbears have a habit of tearing apart anything they see when they're hungry, but the fact that it's standing there means that it's not hungry. In other words, there's only one thing that's getting on its nerves, and that's the fact that he's invaded its territory where the red trout live. If that's the case, he needs to think of a way to escape this situation, but he can only think of one. He widens his stance, and says that his mind may be that of a kimbap, but his body is still just himself, but he has to do this if he wants to live, and he yells, telling it to charge at him already. The bear's eyes lock in, and he says that it has an owl's head, so its night vision is really good, but it is weak to sunlight. He memorized its patterns a long time ago, so he just has to execute it. As it comes in, he says that the only thing he has to do is trust himself, and rely on timing. The only way to create a strong light effect in this situation as he starts to climb up its arm is to shine it directly into its eyes. He puts the flashlight right up to its beak, and then cuts it on, causing the bear to scream as he blinds it. Bro really just used the world's brightest flashlight on this poor thing. The next morning his alarm starts going off, and he says that his whole body aches, and he shuts it off, saying that he might have passed out as soon as he got out, and as if fighting a goblin wasn't enough, he can't believe he ran into an owlbear, and he really doesn't want to see one ever again. He says that he also hasn't had anything to eat since before he went in, but he trips off his bed, and hits the floor, saying that his legs have zero strength in them, but he spots the sun apple in his bag, and takes it out chomping on it. His stamina starts to get restored due to the effect of the sun apple, and he says that now he feels a bit more alive, and that it is time for him to go fill his stomach. But later we see him looking confused, wondering why Mi Kyung is here, and she says that she came to eat, and this place is number 2 on her list of favorite restaurants. He says he meant why she is sitting with him, and she tells him that it is nice to have a meal buddy. She then wonders if he tried the thing she mentioned before. He asks if she is talking about the status window, and she says yes, asking if he tried it, and he says now he understands why she stopped talking back then. She tells him that she really thinks it is real, and she points to the fact that cash went missing in a convenience store, and Sung Ho says it is way too obvious that she wants to know the truth. He says that he tried but unfortunately it didn't show up. His life was completely justified in this situation, and not only is his trait not combat-oriented, his skills specialize for solo play rather than team play, and besides in a situation where safety isn't even guaranteed, revealing his hand is no different from screaming please come and eat me. But for Mi Kyung to still be asking about awakening means that she might have as well. She then apologizes to him, and he asks why she is apologizing. She says that there is something she lied about. He says that she seems like a good person, and she doesn't have to tell him right now as they still have time, so she can tell him later when she is brave enough. He says after he said that he actually headed home, and in front of his house packages were being delivered. He says these dudes are the goat of delivery, and he thanks him for his hard work. What a Chad. He ended up moving everything that he would need later to the rooftop, and the things he needed right away to the second floor. While he was at it, he selected the items he would use for today's operation. He has a gas mask, a fireproof suit, pepper spray, a fire axe, some gasoline, a fire extinguisher, some plumbing pipes, and a monocular, and he says that his mission today is to find a space that can serve as a hideout, so he has to go secure it no matter what. When he heads inside, he says finding one wasn't difficult, as he spotted a suspicious looking place when he was looking for the old goblin, and he peeks back over some bushes, spotting it, saying that it's absolutely perfect for a hideout, but the problem is he doesn't know what monster lives inside of it. As he's staring at the entrance to the cave, he spots some footprints, and says those belong to kobolds, but this is actually a good thing, so he's genuinely happy. Although the plan he came up with would work on all low-tier monsters, he checks the wind direction, saying that for the kobolds who would still be asleep as they are nocturnal, this is absolute poison. For his plan he had to gather firewood, then after placing the firewood near the entrance he poured gasoline onto it, and he then goes to light it on fire, but some of the kobolds wake up, and head outside. They spot him, and he greets them before grabbing his axe, charging straight in. Without a second's worth of hesitation he slices both of their throats, cutting one of their heads off even. He's surprised, saying that he didn't think a one-hit kill was possible for him, but his level increases, and now he gains a total of 4 points. He says he'll figure all that out later, and he wants to start before they wake up. He drops his lighter onto the firewood, and says in the game all low-tier monsters had one thing in common: they were vulnerable to sudden phenomena. Of course burning them directly would be better than just smoking them out, but as the new tenant that would make cleaning up a huge pain. Therefore the strategy he chose was simple: to weaken them by throwing them into a state of confusion. When they charged outside to catch their breath again, he would wipe them out in one fell swoop. He says he thought at least 5 would come out since a kobold pack usually has 7, but he guesses not, and that means the number of remaining individuals will be 3 after he kills these. They spot him, and begin charging directly at him. He rears back his axe, and swipes forward, sending one flying. The other leaps at him through the air, and we see he actually prepared for this as he uses pepper spray, causing it to scream and cry on the floor. He then kills it too by cutting its head off, and he walks over to the last one, saying that the leader is cowering in fear, and that sure is pathetic, but he'll make good use of its hideout before he bashes its brains in. He then takes off his mask, saying that he dealt with them pretty easily, but since he has no stamina it's really tough, and it's just like a game as the debuff from the exhaustion is taking effect too, and the fact that he doesn't get status points when he levels up is pretty rough. But still, leveling up unlocks convenient systems, so today's haul is big, and more than anything he now has a secure space that only he can use, but he's gonna have to clean their nest out first though. He continues getting it ready, and says that the first thing he did was cleaning. It was 15 meters deep, which is a bit on the small side for a shelter, but it was disgusting, and maybe because he had just finished a huge fight it felt like the hardest work he'd ever done. He was genuinely disgusted by their behavior, But he says that now that he had a safe space in the other world he could freely use the gate's properties, which made things a lot easier because he had it connected straight to his bathroom. But he says that it was actually so tiring that he thought he was going to pass out. Anyways, the most surprising fact he learned while traveling between dimensions was that he could fix the coordinates of both the other world and reality, and that means that objects could interact. Even while straddling the boundary between both worlds he was able to get his hose out of his bathroom into the cave, meaning that he could wash it down, getting it extra clean. He says that it looks pretty decent after cleaning, but he'll have to scrub off a lot of the blood stains, and pour concrete on the ground so he can store things easily too, and the mortar will take a few days to set though, but also the sandwich panels too. He then spots stones, and recognizes them as both luminous and ignition stones, and he says that these are essential starter items in the game, and this is a total gold mine, so as soon as he finishes construction he's going to get straight to mining. The next day, as he has 29 days left until the apocalypse, he has severe muscle pains, and he says that he might have overdone it as there's not a single part of him that doesn't hurt. He then looks down at his arm, seeing a bunch of small wounds, wondering when he got these, and he says it's not bad enough to waste a sun apple though, but he does have some other materials, and he could make an ointment. The method for making it is very simple, and he puts the powder in vegetable oil in a 1:1 ratio, then stir until it sets. He finishes making the ointment, and the status window tells him that it will heal wounds slightly, and he says for someone with kitchen experience this is a piece of cake. He starts putting it on his wounds, and says that it does feel like it's healing, but it would be a bit much if it's going to be like this every single time. To raise his stats he has to keep doing what he's doing now, but he feels like he's going to die before the disaster even starts. He says he should maybe take a slingshot, which is smaller than a bow, but it relies heavily on terrain, but he could also take a gun, meaning he could instantly take a couple down at the start of a fight. He then thinks about something, saying that there's one thing that comes to his mind, but it's not a main part of the story in the game, it's just background lore, but maybe that will actually happen in reality too. But whatever the case, it's not completely useless information, and if the same precursor events from the backstory occur it'll be beneficial in many ways, so it's worth him looking into. Having made a plan, he went to the rooftop as scheduled to prepare for construction, and he was genuinely surprised to see that the delivery dude hauled up all of that shit to the rooftop in one night, saying that he's the actual goat of this series. Fortunately for him, the bags he had ordered were all there, so it made his work super easy, and he then went to go pick up the other items he ordered, heading down to the first floor. As he was about to move in the packages, Mi-kyung called out to him, telling him that she's happy to run into him, and he wonders if they've gotten that close because she's dropped formalities, and he says he's been seeing her quite a lot lately. She says that she's been stopping by to eat tteokbokki every day, and he laughs, saying he's sorry he's just been so busy with the store remodeling lately. She says that he certainly looks the part, and he asks what she's talking about. She says that he used to come in for a cut every 3 months, and he looks at his hair, realizing it's gotten pretty long since he's had to tie it up, and she then asks if he'd like a haircut right now. He says he needed one anyway, so this isn't bad, telling her that he'd love one. They head to her store, and she sets him down, asking how he wants it cut today. He tells her to shave it all off. She asks why, and he says he wants to have a fresh start. She says if that's the case she'll make it look as good as possible, but she feels like his shoulders have gotten broader too, and he says he did start working out recently, and he guesses it's showing. She says that she heard something recently, and that the status window is related to survival life, and he says that's interesting, and she tells him that the Awakeners are said to be people who've played the game at least once. He asks if that's really the case, but asks her where she got the information, and she goes to tell him before the bell rings, and a man enters with a snake tattoo on his arm. His name is Inhik, and she asks what he's doing here at this hour, and he says that he came to share some more intel. Sung-ho fought this guy before in real life because of him being hella loud, and he wonders if this pushy bastard was really her source. Inhik tells her that it seems like the guy is trying to monopolize information, deleting all his videos, and dipped. She asks if he's serious, and Sung-ho says that sounds pretty familiar, and Inhik says that right now in their group they're trying to find out where he lives. She says that that sounds illegal though, and Sung-ho still just wonders who it is. Inhik tells her that honestly they're not in a situation where they can be picky, and catching that Kimbap son of a bitch, then getting him to share the info is for the public good. She says still it's too much. Sung-ho says he had a feeling from the first words, but they're actually hunting him down. Inhik grabs her hand forcefully, saying that she needs to join their team, but she tells him not yet. Sung-ho says this is ridiculous, and he deleted them all because he was disillusioned, and he's not trying to monopolize anything. He didn't even have time to think about that. Inhek takes the scissors out of her hand, and grabs her by the shoulder saying that she's so frustrating. He's telling her it's exactly like playing the game. Sung-ho calls him disgusting, acting like he knows everything, and Inhek says if that bastard just posted his info, they never would have had to do this. Sung-ho wonders why he's talking like he's already caught him, and Inhek tells her once more that he can't wait for long. Sung-ho wonders if the community is really flooded with bad things about him, and if that's the case maybe he should be the one to discuss the info. Inhek tells her to make a decision, and Sung-ho calls out to him saying that he doesn't know what he's talking about, but surely he can discuss it later. Inhek asks him who the hell he thinks he is, and Sung-ho gets right into his face telling him to get lost while he's asking nicely unless he wants to be humiliated again like last time. Inhek gets a little scared, and says that it seems like it's not his day, so he'll be heading off. Mi-kyung tells him bye, and then sighs out of relief when he's gone. Sung-ho tells her he wants to exchange numbers just in case because that dude is bad news. Back at his home he put the construction aside for a moment, and even shaved, but he turned on his computer, and looked himself up on the forum, and it turns out that everybody was trying to figure out who he was in real life, even giving death threats. And the person who released the important intel early was getting hate too, but he saw an ID that seemed to be the person that was yapping to Mi-kyung. Sung-ho calls him crazy asking if he really went through the effort of making a nickname since it requires real ID verification, and he says the posts that he made were always filled with curses about him, but he also mentioned how he's trying to seduce Mi-kyung. Yikes. Sung-ho calls him scum saying that he turned off his computer feeling disgusted with humanity. Of course he was just sick of them. He's not actually mentally broken, but he also feels like his head is getting clearer. He opens his gate saying that for the next 2 days he immersed himself in working on the hideout. He mined stones with a pickaxe to blow off steam, and spread the mortar mixing it with the water, and smoothed it out evenly along his floor. After finishing the work he came out to wait for the mortar to dry, and looking at the moon rising a thought came to him. An eye for an eye, and injustice for injustice. He's not a hero, so he doesn't need a grand sense of a mission, because in the end he just needs to survive. And right after he made that resolution to turn around he heard a familiar sound. He turned back around wondering if it's what he thought it was, and it's none other than a bone creeper, and he says he can't believe this son of a bitch had to show up right now as his mood is already absolute shit. Its jaw starts clattering louder, and louder until there's a massive explosion. We've all had this happen on Minecraft. Shortly after the explosion we see Sung-ho laying on the floor, and his hand begins twitching as he jolts awake, and he wonders what happened, but then recalls how a bone creeper just exploded, but he wonders how he survived, so he plays it back in his head. When he confirmed its appearance he was already on the verge of exploding, so he barely managed to create distance, which is probably the reason he's still alive, but he's not unscathed, and when he looks at his arms and shoulders there's bone fragments all in them. He opens his status window showing us that his level and points have increased, meaning that it considered that he defeated it just like in the game. As he stares at the stats his vision goes blurry for a second, and he says that this isn't good. He opens the portal heading home, immediately starting treatment, and he pulls out the bone fragments then applies it with ointment. After applying the ointment he quickly bandaged himself, but right after he'd finished that process he knocked the hell out on his couch. He then woke up to the sun saying that he's going to die early at this rate, but he also should have checked if the first aid worked before sleeping. When he wakes up he sees his stats have gone up though they're still down from where they usually are, but luckily it seems like it worked, but he wonders where the bone creeper suddenly appeared from too. While the forest is vast it's not that strange for something to pop out suddenly, and he guesses he should increase his perception stat which increases detection abilities. The ways to increase stats in the game starts with you repeatedly doing something gaining experience, and the second is by obtaining items with stats, but the game is super hardcore. To obtain items with stats you had to defeat monsters that were higher than your own stats or those corresponding to events, but even then it was pure RNG, and when he farmed the same mobs he never really got what he wanted. He explains that one time he got a skill called Wild Instinct from a high-tier monster, but of course the skill didn't suit him. But regardless he wants to know how to get items in his current situation, and to find that out he decided to examine the background story he remembered last time. The background story contains a lot of phenomena that occurred before the meteor fell, and in other words if things go well there's a possibility of acquiring items before the apocalypse even arrives. Of course that's only the premise that the phenomena occur in reality, and that strong monsters will appear. He clicks on the history, but after thoroughly reading the background story for quite a while he learned that a total of 3 would occur, the Russian ship being the last one, and the hobgoblins before that. There's no other information on the hobgoblin one though, but the first one he found was an orc's corpse on a mountain. He says that if he wants to arrive in time as it was on the 26th in the afternoon he needs to get there on the morning of the 25th, and he sits up saying he has to prepare for this quickly. Mi-kyung then calls his phone, and he wonders what she's calling for at this hour. They head to a cafe where she asks him if he's okay, and he asks why she's worried. She tells him that his expression, but also he's wearing a long sleeve shirt, and a pair of pants. He says he just doesn't get bothered much by the heat, but finds it a little scary how sharp she is, saying that a woman's intuition is terrifying. She asks if maybe it's perhaps the fact that his haircut was interrupted, and he says that's not it either. She tells him that that's a relief, but because she was pretty scared of it all. Sung-ho laughs, saying that it's true that he hates that bastard, as last winter he caused a ruckus after illegally modifying his truck, and picked fights with old people who looked weak. The dude's a complete asshat. She asks if that really happened, saying she had no idea he was that kind of person, and Sung-ho says that she wouldn't know that as he always did it early in the morning, but he wants her to get to the point, asking why she called for him. She says that if it's okay she needs his ear for a moment. She then whispers, telling him that she's unawakened. He wonders why she's discussing it with him, saying that he should go along with the mood, and he tells her he's jealous as he hasn't awakened yet. She says that she's sorry, she just felt bad about lying, and he tells her that it's okay as he never misunderstood since he knows what kind of person she is, but he's glad that she's consistently sharing info, and talking to him. Thanks to her he feels a little better, if that makes any sense. He was actually on edge because of the remodeling, but he's glad he came to talk to her, but in the meantime he's going to go study the game's survival life. He'll see her next time. He guesses it's good to meet people with decent character because he does feel really nice about talking to her. But he goes online buying a drone to scout the forest, and renting a car to use for the trip. He then lays down saying that he wants to try to get in some good sleep to maximize his condition. The next day, as soon as dawn broke, he began making materials for hunting the orc, and crushing the ignition stone would require considerable caution because if you hit it incorrectly sparks would flare up. Next was the luminous stone. It also had issues as light burst out, and it would still sting his eyes even through a welding mask, but it's reliable so he's going to have to bear with it. Having completed the basic setup for catching an orc, he poured in sugar, gasoline, and various organic solvents, mixed in a hardening agent to solidify, the ignition stone powder, and some resin. He set it out on a desk inside of his shelter, and he heads back to reality, checking out the rental car storage, saying that it was a nice idea to get one as he packed everything he needed into it. He then hops in the driver's seat, saying it's time to go hunt an orc. Before midnight he finally arrived at the campground parking lot, and he spent the remaining time doing image training, and checking his equipment. As soon as the next day began it was time for his full-scale search, and after 2 hours of climbing the mountain, and scouting, the rain began to get heavier. He says on top of that there's also a mist that makes it hard to see, and he's just curious as to where the orcs will come out of. He's checked around the campground, and he says as expected the precursor phenomena must just not happen. It isn't until he hears the sound of an orc screaming, and he turns realizing that it actually does, but unlike the orc that it was in the game, this one is a red orc, meaning that it will drop a skill. He tells himself to stay calm as he starts to light a flare, and he says that if he sticks to his plan he can definitely catch it. The method he devised to deal with the orc was as follows. He would first use the orc's aggression to draw its aggro, and in the moment it was drawn in by the flare it would attack it. He would take this chance aiming for the orc whose movement has stopped as he runs straight toward it. He opens his portal sliding underneath it, and he reaches under his coat. As his head slips into the portal he pulls out a homemade flashbang, using it to completely Helen Keller the orc while he is safe inside of his portal. He says it will take about 20 seconds for its vision to return. From now on it is a race against time as he lights the fuse of another item in the portal world. He says first he needs to stab its side while it is confused, and restrict its movement. As he does exactly that the orc screams, and swings straight toward him. He ducks underneath before stabbing its Achilles tendon, causing it to scream, dropping to its knees. Once it is eye level it is time for the final part. He reaches into the portal pulling up the fuse he just lit, saying that he needs to shove this directly into its mouth. As he does that we see an explosion, and he gets sent flying backwards. He says even an orc shouldn't be able to survive this, but it hits him sending him rolling backwards, and he says he actually can't believe he let his guard down like an idiot. He looks up at it as it's ablaze, but his vision is going blurry, and he wonders if this is how he will die, but he then hears the level up sound, and we see he has gone up 3 levels, but also acquired 10 points, also the skill will to survive. He says he really isn't built for this shit, but looks around wondering where the drops are, and he then spots something, and equips it as we see it's a watch with +2 perception. He says it was hard to find because of the rain, and it sucks the watch is a little deformed, but perception is great, but now he doesn't know what to do with the orc. The incident was definitely under an embargo, but releasing this information is the right thing to do, but he's pessimistic. If what Mi Kyung said back then is true, that means at least several thousand people have awakened, and even if only a minority of them are guys like Inhek, they are likely to collapse systems, and laws for personal gain, and cause riots. The biggest problem is if he leaves this orc here, he'll become a bone creeper, and harm people as soon as tomorrow. He then thinks about it, wondering why he never thought he might not become a zombie. Even if he's awakened, there's no guarantee he won't turn into a zombie if infected by the spores. He then starts wondering what the right choice is. He couldn't bring himself to make one right there, but what was certain nonetheless was that even for the few people who will survive, the world needs to meet an orderly end. He starts digging a hole but wonders how deep it needs to be to put it in there, and he says that if his body was fine he wouldn't struggle this much too. His skill will to survive activates due to his exhaustion, meaning his combat will, stamina regen, health regen, and perception are all greatly increased. He says that he just needs to finish this quickly, so he had no choice but to move as fast as possible. At a glance the skill seems pretty overpowered, but that's because after the effect wears off he quickly heads into a portal. He runs over to his car, and starts driving away, saying it'll take time for his body before he can move again. He makes it back home, and looks up at the sky saying that he hopes it worked out. According to the plan he should have started building the defensive line by now, but at least the remnants of the orc have been erased. But now it's too late for him to start anything else today, so he's wondering if he should go check the community, and look at the items he got this morning. He opens up a box finding a whole bunch of weapons, and tools, and gets excited. He says of course in reality he can only use it as an Indian war club for now, but since it's all usable it's not bad. But it seems like a few items are missing, so he wonders what's the deal with that. He then looks in the box, pulling out a note, and it turns out they just couldn't get it through customs. There's then a knock on the door, and he says it must be another delivery telling them to just leave it there. The knocking continues, and he wonders why they are still knocking. He asks if they didn't hear him saying that they can just leave it in front. He opens the door but is surprised as it's none other than Mi Kyung. She says she's sorry, but it's been a while since they met, and she wanted to talk to him today, and if it's okay with him she also brought some food that they could eat together too. A little later we see her about to sit down, and he says he can't believe she's in his house, and while it's unbelievable he wonders if this could be considered them getting closer. She tells him to hurry up, and eat, and he says of course, then asks what she wanted to talk about. She says that he mentioned he was looking into the game last time, so she thought they could share some info. He says of course the apocalypse is right around the corner, so why was he thinking this was them getting closer, but still sharing information with her is the right thing to do, as good people are what you need in an apocalypse. They finish eating, and she says she'll quickly take out the trash, and he says he'll get some things ready. While she was gone he brought out his laptop, deleting his search history as there was no better way to share info while hiding the fact he's an awakened than through the community, starting from detailed explanations of the disease. He told her that moving in groups of 6 or more increases the chances of being detected by zombies and monsters, and that perception stats are critical for survival. She asks if that means compared to the other stats perception is the most important, and he says that's right because it is a survival game after all, and he's going to show her what he found next. She then tells him that just like he said, it looks like Inhek was right, and Kimbop is getting a lot of hate. He says that he can see that too, and she wonders why he thinks Kimbop isn't sharing info. Sung-ho says he's not sure since he's never played the game, asking what she thinks, and she says that honestly she kind of understands it. Everyone has their reasons, and circumstances that make sense to them. Speaking of Inhek, she turned down his offer, and Sung-ho asks why. She hands Sung-ho her phone, and he overhears a recording of them talking about kidnapping her. Sung-ho gets pissed, and says that if a real catastrophe hits, and the rule of law collapses, there will be a lot of people revealing their true nature, so she can't trust anyone. She asks what about him, and says that she wants to form a party with him. He's speechless, and says that he honestly couldn't respond easily. One of his goals was to reach level 10 before the tutorial, and unlock the shop, and that's where the problem lies. The game uses a system where monster tiers scale based on level, meaning that if she traveled with him she'd definitely die a pointless death. He tells her he appreciates the offer but he might turn into a zombie, and she says that she thinks that it'd be fine still. She uses her ability to teleport across the house. She says that her trait is called Blink, and she'll dodge before he tries to bite her. He tells her that's not something she should show others, and she says she showed it because it's him, but also as a sign of trust. So if they both survive without turning into zombies, even if they can't be a team, she'd at least like to be cooperative. Back to the other world, Seung-ho says building the fence wasn't difficult. First he just hammers the support post into the ground, wraps the barbed wire around once or twice, then secures it tightly, then installs infrared sensors here and there, and he finally gets it all finished. He says it sure looks cool, and this deserves at least more than 1 point in the handiwork skill. Now that the mortar work is done too, and the defense line is established, it's time for him to start moving packages in. He finally moves in everything, and he says that once he divides the interior with sandwich panels, the internal setup will be almost complete. He then hits a nasty ass sneeze, blow ya damn nose, and says as expected this world is chilly, it feels like late autumn. Soon he'll have to be sleeping here, so he needs to prepare for that. While he's at it, instead of blackout curtains for the entrance he should build a real proper door, and then laughs at himself saying it feels like his to-do list is getting longer. He stopped by a nearby carpentry workshop to request custom work, and buy various items. On the way back he walked for 5 hours before for his pre-disease checklist, finding the places he needs to loot. He's making a list saying after the hardware store he'll hit the pharmacy, and then the motorcycle shop. Someone then calls out to him, and Seung-ho recognizes him, calling him by the name of Hyunjun. He's a gym owner, and it tells us that he's divorced, and has a young daughter, and his nickname is Protein Master. Seung-ho asks if something's wrong since he looks terrible. He says he's got a lot going on, but then asks Seung-ho if he started working out again. He tells him that it looks like the muscle memory he carved in is coming back. Seung-ho says he's been using his body a lot recently because of the remodeling, asking what's up with him. He says that he thinks the world is actually ending. Seung-ho asks if he heard too, and Hyunjun says yeah, one of the gym members told him about status windows, and zombies, asking if he believes it. Seung-ho says he's not sure. Hyunjun says he didn't believe it at first, but then he told him to watch carefully, and then started levitating. Seung-ho asks if it's really real, and Hyunjun says that he saw it with his own eyes. That was 100% a superpower. Seung-ho tells him he hasn't awakened yet, and Hyunjun says neither has he. Hyunjun then tells him that Guy said he's heading to a broadcasting station to hit it big, and Seung-ho asks how his train of thought got there. Hyunjun asks how he's meant to know, but he says he's got a meeting set up already. Seung-ho takes a seat beside him, asking if the existence of awakened people will soon be known to the general public. Hyunjun says that there's something even crazier, and Seung-ho asks like what? He says obviously the shootout, and Seung-ho asks what he's talking about by a shootout. Hyunjun wonders if he really didn't watch the news this morning, and Seung-ho tells him he was busy. Hyunjun says that makes sense, so he should go check the board. It turns out that somebody made a report as he witnessed a shootout, but afterwards the media was completely controlled, and anything related to it was deleted. Seung-ho says this is insane. Hyunjun himself says that he witnessed the news being deleted in real time, but Seung-ho wonders where the follow-up reporting is. Hyunjun tells him that the news said that it was a shooting incident caused by a deserter, but who knows? It's not the kind of thing you'd issue breaking news for, but the entire area is now sealed off by the military and police, and they're hiding something. Seung-ho jolts up, telling him that he just remembered something he has to do, so he'll visit next time. Hyunjun says that if he wants to hear the rest he should bring protein powder next time. After returning home he spent a long time organizing his thoughts. It was a shootout the day after the Orc incident ends, and the perfectly coordinated media response means the government knew of it. But how? Hardly anyone should know the exact timing of the first event, and he buried the Orc in the other dimension because he wanted a controlled apocalypse. But now a shootout happens out of nowhere. It might be excessive speculation, but what if someone linked information to the government early, and intended to act starting with the first event? And what if that person, unlike him, didn't have an offensive trait, and therefore didn't step up to the front line? He can't be sure who it is, though what he does know for sure is that there is someone behind the government controlling them. Seung-ho says that he narrowed it down to the creator of the game, and 3 other veteran players. He didn't need to think about it much, he eliminated the creator, and he doesn't know how they pulled it off, But the fact that the game is happening in reality means the ones who built the world and the system are the most likely to be the villains. Besides, if the creator was backed by the government, they would have never let him kill an orc. For now, the 3 that he played with are the most likely suspects. He wonders if it's survivor number 1. If his theory is right, that means he doesn't need to share the information with the government himself. He says that the way he acted in game was slightly different than real life, so he doesn't know if the real number 1 would be the same person he knew, but he does miss his boys. He decides to trust them for now, and it's not like sharing info would stop a catastrophe anyways. 2 whole days later, he's got actual bunker doors on this bad boy now, and a whole ton of food stocked and ready. He made a food storage, and an armory. Now he's just waiting for the generator. For phase 2 he'll install steel logistics trays, and drill through the wall with a hammer drill, but there's way less space than he thought. The basement waterproofing is done since he's been working on it bit by bit, but until it fully heals he can't store anything down there, but he'll need to figure out the rest during phase 2 construction, and there's something important left to do. He hops on the drone, and says he knew it was big, but this is basically Amazon level. Drones are overpowered, and he has no worry about getting ambushed while exploring, and making real-time maps is easy, and honestly goated. After a moment of admiration he set the shelter as the center point, and began a full-scale terrain exploration. He learned that there were perpetual snow fields in the northwest, and that there was an ocean to the south. The ocean had no monsters, and plenty of prey, so he should go there and set up some fish traps. He says that with the terrain scouting finished, he examined the valley to study the ecosystems around the shelter. Thankfully there are no more owlbears. He spots the place where he met the owlbear originally, but the corpse is gone. He wonders if the owlbear ate it, because the bone creeper he saw wasn't the goblin. Judging from the footprints it's too early to conclude though. Some are goblin tracks, and that makes it suspicious. The distance between the valley and the shelter is about 1.5 kilometers, and this might mean the shelter is more dangerous than he thought. Concluding that goblins were nearby, he pressed the return to home button since he can't afford to lose his golden treasure. After the return flight, he laid out the map, and noted where the animals were. He says this is a rough map of what it looks like around his base, and now he needs to go check each area himself because that's the only way to get detailed info. Starting with the swamp he should check if farming is possible. His phone begins going off, and he recognizes it as the infrared detectors outside. He says speak of the devil, and they shall appear. As he looks at a bunch of goblin tracks he says they don't know manners. It doesn't look like a whole group, but maybe 6 to 8 out hunting. They came right to him on their own feet, and he wonders if it's because of his perception stat going up, but every sound felt louder than usual, and he was able to spot them while hiding. It seems like they were fighting over food, and there's a leader. Sung Ho says this is a perfect ambush angle. He draws back his bow, and shoots the first shot, hitting the leader straight in the forehead, killing it instantly. The other goblins turn confused, and start screaming. Amidst the confusion Sung Ho takes the chance to shoot another one, killing him too. The rest follow where the arrow came from. As they get close to the bushes he readies his fire axe, and goes in with a swing, cutting one of their throats, killing it. Leaving the axe in its throat he grabs his blade, and quickly dispatches another. He then pulls out a machete, and seeing that makes 4 he asks them what they're gonna do. They shoot poison darts, but they bounce off his armor, and he says they're being rude when someone's talking. 3 of them charge him, but they don't attack, they encircle him, and he says melee must be their last resort since the poison didn't work, but that's excellent for him. He reaches into his pocket, and throws something on the ground making a blinding light, and it makes them all drop to their knees spitting up. He says that the status effect hit properly, so it's time to finish this, and he cuts off all 4 of their heads with lightning speed. He levels up to 4, gaining 16 points. He says he only tried because they were weakened from the confusion, but he's surprised it worked. A little later, Sung Ho says that this is tiresome, but it is pretty funny that his will to survive skill did not trigger during battle, but while he is digging instead. It is crazy how efficient this skill actually is. While he found it funny, the activation was not useless, and unlike with the orc, only his health stat dropped a tiny bit, and he was able to confirm that the recoil is not severe. He finishes burying all the corpses, saying that he should go check his loot, and get some fruit that restores his health. He says that he has never seen it before it got ground up into a powder, and judging by all of this vegetable oil, there might be a place to harvest it somewhere nearby. He decides to go check the boss's pouch, and is surprised as what he sees is a toad. He wonders why it would be carrying a living one instead of a dead one, and then sniffs it, saying that he can tell, based on the smell of this green liquid oozing out of it, that this is the paralysis poison that goblins use. He says that he absolutely has to raise this thing, because more than anything it is cute, and also being able to extract paralysis poison means he will have opportunities to raise his poison resistance, but it also means hunting will become easier too. He gives it the nickname of Jadok, and tells it that he will give it lots of food. A status window appears, saying that he gave Toad a name, and due to its sleeping state he has forcibly succeeded in empathizing with the toad, and it will now be considered his property. He says this is crazy, as he does not remember this being inside the game, and says it might be a hidden gimmick added because it is in reality now, like the portal gate that he has too. Maybe an update happened during the week that he did not log in, but he says that does not make sense, because who would update right before their servers shut down, and that he should stop thinking about the problem for now, and that he should finish exploring. He went back and forth through the gate reorganizing until he finally headed out to search his surroundings. He found a spring that he could not see with the drone, and he says that it is really pretty. He then ladles up some of the water, saying that he was worried, and that it is just normal water. It solves the issue of finding drinking water nearby, so he does not have to go to the swamp either. There are other items just as he guessed, which is the vegetable oil, and the fruit that he got earlier. He says after that he just picked all the fruits, and harvested an appropriate amount of vegetable oil too, but he says that he will leave a good chunk just in case. He left markers everywhere so he would not forget the way to this place, then he headed back. The next day we hear him cheering on Jadok, telling him to say ah as he is trying to feed it. Jadok munches on that, and Sungho says he decided to raise him on the second floor for the time being. Toads live in environments around 18 to 25 degrees, and if he left it in the hideout without proper heating facilities it would most likely die. Jadok starts spitting up some poison into a cup for him, and Sungho calls it cute. He says besides taking care of it there were other things for him to do, and among them what took him the longest time was making the ointment. No matter how much he looks at it he made way too much, but he cannot give it to Mi Kyung, who isn't awakened either, and he does not know how to handle this. He then thinks about it, saying that he can go give some to Hyunjun. We see Hyunjun chugging a protein shake, saying that as expected the ones Sungho makes are the best, and Sungho laughs, saying that he knows he is a little late. Hyunjun tells him it is fine, as he honestly expected him to come the next day, and he was a bit disappointed. Sungho says that while he did come late he came with his hands full, and Hyunjun laughs, saying that he did not expect a whole container of protein, but asks what the deal with the ointment is. Sungho says that he bought too much, and it is supposed to be good for wounds. Hyunjun asks if he is doing some MLM shit, and Sungho says of course not. Hyunjun thanks him for sending him information related to the game as well, and Sungho says he is the one who is grateful. If it was not for him he would not have known about the shooting incident, but the gym is way too quiet. Hyunjun tells him it is because everybody went to make plans. Sungho asks what he is talking about, and Hyunjun tells him that there was that guy who went to the broadcasting station, and it looks like he spread info to the members before leaving, so at the members' request they decided to make a base here. Sungho asks how many people are going to be staying, and Hyunjun tells him 20. Sungho asks if he read the info properly, as more than 6 people is dangerous, and Hyunjun says that there is nothing they can do, as they have to try somehow. They are all members, so he cannot abandon them. Sungho says as expected he is a man of loyalty. Hyunjun then asks what he is going to do, and Sungho says he is going to think about it more. Hyunjun tells him that since he is a non-awakened, if he does not have anywhere else to go to come here. But then they hear a scream outside, and Sungho is the first to spring into action, telling him to let him get a look. He opens the window, and looks down surprised at what he spots on the bottom, which is none other than Mi Kyung. She slowly opens her eyes, and Sungho asks if she is conscious. She wonders what he is doing here, and he says that is what he wanted to ask her, asking if she remembers anything. She says that she does not remember well, but somebody suddenly attacked her. Hyunjun gets pissed, telling Sungho to stay with her, and Sungho tells him that they should figure it out first. We also learn that Mi Kyung used to go to the gym with Sungho. Hyunjun says that he will check the entire area, and while Sungho is annoyed he asks Mi Kyung if she remembers anything about them. She says that she does not, since everything suddenly went dark. She knows that the explanation is strange, but it was not like someone covered her eyes, it just went all dark. Sungho gets annoyed, asking if they already started moving, and tells her if something happens like this again to use blink immediately. She asks if he knows anything, and he says that she needs to use it. He will send her self-defense equipment too, so to make sure to carry it, and from now on she needs to be very careful. Sungho explains that from a long time ago, there was a famous meme that if 5 people gather, one of them is trash, as trollers exist everywhere, especially inside the game where there is no interface other than patches. It was even more so, and trollers would join a team pretending to be an ordinary user, and then they would lure the party into a place swarming with monsters, and wipe them out, and they would approach newbies pretending to be kind, and then kill them, and steal their items, and they committed all sorts of strange actions such as creating conflicts between parties to make them fight, and if you paired the amount of trolls there were, with how unpopular the game was, they played a significant role in making it totally fail, and of course, a big reason why the users dropped to 4 was because they severely disciplined all of the few remaining trolls. If you're wondering why he's suddenly giving this explanation, it's because it was the perfect time for trolls to run rampant, and he's explaining this to someone saying that to summarize the information he's found out so far is that the Awakener communities were integrated after the shootout, and they're not just sharing information, but also plotting schemes, and there were people selling his videos too. He recognizes one of them saying that this bastard was definitely a troll, and his name was Daojusum. The dude says that he's selling the videos of Sung Ho carrying him, but Sung Ho says he never carried anyone, and he might just be trying to bait people with some spliced footage, but that's pretty respectable, and he wonders how he cooked this shit up in his mind, and he says that the way to fight back against guys like that, he needs to increase his training time. For 13 days, whenever he had a moment, he was consistently learning weapon usage, and techniques that could be used in real combat from YouTube, and however up until now, the things that he's seen here were mostly for attacking monsters including the hideout, and there were many weapons and strategies that didn't consider the disease, and so starting today, he's going to choose a main weapon that can be used even if the disease spreads across, and is good for anti-personal combat, and monster extermination. He starts sorting through all of his items, and he says that if he considers all the conditions, there are almost no weapons he can use, and he says that he'll first try out the slingshot, and it has high utility in many ways, and as he aims at the target, he shoots it, but it bounces off the side, and he says that the beads lack a ton of power, and eventually all that's left is the Indian War Club. In fact, once the disease was set as a premise, there was no need to worry, and the easiest way to deal with the zombie is to crush the spores lodged inside the skull with a blunt weapon, and the first item he plans to buy at the level 10 shop is a blunt weapon type item called Ebony Wood Club, and so he needs to raise his proficiency, but he doesn't know if this is the best against people too, and he finds it way too ambiguous. If he meets a psychic awakener, he won't even be able to lift a finger, but he won't just stand by because in survival life killing a human gave him 50 points, and he closes his eyes, and starts to do some imagery training saying that of course the murderer system which would require death matches with nearby users if registered as a murder, it prevented the abusive player killing, but there would be a ass load of guys who would kill players to earn points even if they included demerits, and so he should show people like that zero mercy. He snaps out of it as he's panting looking at the training dummy, and he says still it's probably best to avoid them until he finishes item, and skill farming, and while he's at it, he should dismantle the store entirely, and put a detector in the second floor. He then hears the sound of howling, and wonders why he can hear a wolf at this hour, and then he thinks about it saying maybe one got hurt near his hideout, and he walks over with his protective gear a little later, and says that this one's big enough that he can ride on, and it's a gray wolf. He says that its breathing's already gone, but more importantly the fact that it died near his hideout. He doesn't know if he should assume it was a stray wolf, or one that came down after being attacked, and to find out more details, he decides to check its wounds first. As he starts touching it, something flies out from the bushes behind him hitting him in the back, and he then realizes that the thing that just hit him is none other than the cub of the wolf, and he doesn't know what to do about this, and he can't just forcibly separate the cub who's acting like this, but he has to bury it quickly because if the deceased mother was a monster, it will turn into a bone creeper, and if not it will attract other monsters. He digs a giant hole, and looks down at it saying that he can almost see China, and he says this little cub reminds him of his younger self, and he's reminded of his dog Munchie that he raised when he was little, and he picks up the cub, bites his neck, and says that it needs to listen to what he has to say, and its mom will be sleeping here, and he'll even make it a little dog hole in the hideout so it can come visit whenever it misses its mom, and he'll make sure that it doesn't starve until it's all grown up. In return it should help him with its sense of smell, and he starts waving the treat after giving the dog a bite asking if it's going to come with him or not, and the dog gets excited, and Sung Ho says that it has to be a yes, and he says from now on its name will be Dingo, and that he'll be counting on it. The status window appears saying that he has successfully named the wolf, but also succeeded in communicating with it, and the dog is now considered his property. Later, Sung Ho says in one word, his kid was a genius, and he tells Dingo to do it again just like he taught him, and he teaches him how to shake hands, and even do turning, sitting, laying down, and to be quiet, and he then tells him to wait as he backs away from him, and pulls out a treat, throwing it into the air telling Dingo to jump, and Dingo runs to a nearby box, hopping off of it before grabbing the bone out of the air. Sung-ho says it must be because he's a creature from another world, and he's also good at scent tracking, and it was probably the best blessing he's gotten so far, and he picks it up, and starts kissing him, saying at this rate he's going to grow to be too big to do this too. He then gets a phone call from Hyunjin, but Sung-ho says it's unusual that he contacts him first, and Hyunjin is telling him to search for levitation on the internet, and he does so, seeing the guy Hyunjin was talking about doing a live demonstration for everyone, and the article hit rank 1, and all of the commenters asking if it's real. Sung-ho says tons of the comments are from ordinary people who have nothing to do with it, but there are some awake and calling him smooth brain for revealing his trait to everyone, and Sung-ho says it's hilarious that they curse him for not sharing info, but they hate it when the info they know gets spread, but he wonders how the government will respond to this. It looks like some people are trying to use shock and superpowers as a reason to hold rallies, but he shouldn't dig too deep into this, because once the second event occurs, which is the Hobgoblin one, he'll naturally see the government's reaction and direction, and so right now he needs to use his time even better. He tells Dingo that he's sorry, but starting today they need to begin exploration immediately, as preparing thoroughly is the only answer for him now, and Sung-ho asks Dingo if he's up for it, and Dingo wags his tail and barks, like the video or Dingo gets it. Sung-ho says among all the things he could do, the reason he chose interdimensional exploration is simple, and first he needs to prepare for the upcoming Hobgoblin event. He needed to imprint the scent of goblins properly, and he leads him straight to a hiding spot from the scent. Sung-ho says this is better than he expected, and next was to see whether Dingo could stay calm and live combat, but also follow his commands, and he sends Dingo forward, and he dashes straight towards a rabbit, and Sung-ho says currently he's trying to confirm whether hunting is also possible in the other world, and Dingo successfully catches the rabbit. Sung-ho walks over, saying last time it ran away so he didn't get to check properly, and judging by the size and the claws, the animals here are definitely stronger than those on Earth, and after that he continued his exploration, but one question ran through his head. He wonders what Dingo's intelligence stat would be like. He says they need to head to the valley, but we see his health increases by 1, and he's a little surprised by this, considering his health stat was 170 as Kimbap. He's actually growing pretty fast now. Dingo starts panting, and Sung-ho quickly runs over with a bottle of water, telling him that he told him not to move alone in the forest, but that burning sensation must be because he ate this, and Sung-ho recognizes it as it's called a bull pepper. He says that Dingo did great though, and he'll give him a lot of treats later, and with that harvest they set out to their final hunt, which was near a river, and Sung-ho asks Dingo if there's any sense or presence, and Dingo shakes his head no. Sung-ho says of course red trouts aren't classified as monsters, so they don't give points or items, but for a curious growing Dingo, giving him experience alone was worth it, and Sung-ho spears one, saying that now they can finish preparing for phase 2 construction, and heading home. The next day we see his sign being loaded into the back of a truck, and the construction guy says that wraps it up for the demolition, and if any repair issues come up to contact them, and Sung-ho thanks him for working so hard in the morning, but looks back at his shop, saying that it kind of hits hard now that it's taken down. He then walks inside, saying that it was a necessary choice, and if someone's lucky enough not to turn into a zombie, then looting a shop is natural, but that's the same with him, and if he survives he'll scavenge too, so he has no right to complain, but still he should at least clean up. Hyunjin then walks in, saying that he guesses everybody's thinking the same, as he left only the bare minimum of equipment yesterday too, and Sung-ho asks what he's doing here, and Hyunjin flicks his forehead, saying that he left him on red yesterday, so he came to see if he was dead or alive. Dingo starts barking at him, and so Hyunjin asks if he always had a husky, and Sung-ho says no, his dog died a long time ago, and Dingo's a new pet he brought home, and Hyunjin says that it's adorable, but Sung-ho wonders more so what he's doing here. Hyunjin says that he already told him that he came because he was worried if he was alive, and Sung-ho asks if that's really all, but Hyunjin says not only that, and he was worried too because the guys who attacked Mi-kyung, he finally figured out who they were. A little later they're sitting down, and Sung-ho asks if what he's saying is that the party that Chol-jun made was targeting Mi-kyung, and Hyunjin says it is, and that In-hek is also with their party, and he then points at the mountain behind them, saying that they supposedly have a hideout there. Sung-ho asks how he figured all of this out, and Hyunjin tells him that it just lined up perfectly, and Sung-ho asks for him to elaborate, and Hyunjin tells him that the dude who can levitate, Jin-sung, he just asked him just in case, and he said that he did meet with Chol-jun's group before, but all of them seemed like bad people, and their personalities clashed a lot, so he refused their offer. After Mi-kyung's incident, female members started saying they'd leave the party, and so when he asked them what happened, They all said they had received offers from awakener parties asking if it clicks for him now, and Sung-ho says it does, and unlike Mi-kyung they must have been tricked into joining, and Hyunjin says that their party is down to 4. Sung-ho is surprised because there were 20 of them just a few days ago, and Hyunjin says that he can't say he doesn't get it, and honestly his party only has 2 awakeners, and Sung-ho says that it's ironic that they did them a favor, and this is the result. Hyunjin says that's just how it is, and they're only looking out for themselves, but more importantly he's worried about someone named June, and he debates calling his ex-wife, and Sung-ho says that he forgot his situation was different from his, and that's why he needs to ask if his thinking is truly right. So he tells him he has something he's curious about, and he wonders what he would do if people started threatening him if the apocalypse came, and Hyunjin says that they would have to kill him, and his principle is not to harm others, but that's a given, and in a disaster without the rule of law absolute evil has no value in being kept alive. But it's not like him to ask something like this. Sung-ho says that it just sort of came up, and his phone starts going off like crazy screaming help, and Hyunjin says that scared the hell out of him, and Hyunjin recognizes it as a lost child help noise. Sung-ho looks down at his phone telling Hyunjin to keep an eye on Dingo for a minute, and it was none other than Mi-kyung who pressed the button, and we see In-hek and his group harassing her, and she says that she refused, but they keep following her asking why they're doing this. In-hek says that she should just think about it one more time, and another dude steps up saying he's going to do things his way, and that's Chul-jun, and the other guy I'm not going to remember his name so we'll just call him Skinny, and he says that this is a redevelopment area so no one's going to come here. Chul-jun says that she should stop wasting her energy, and not forget they have traits too. We see Sung-ho hiding nearby with some weapons as Chul-jun says he'll count to 3, and as he starts counting Sung-ho loads up a slingshot, and draws it back right before he gets to 3, firing it. It flies straight and hitting Chul-jun in the shoulder causing him to drop his bat, and In-hek and Skinny both turn wondering who it is, and Sung-ho charges in asking why he would answer them in the first place, and he swings upwards hitting In-hek's chin sending him flying backwards. He then turns towards Skinny who has a purple aura on his hand, and Sung-ho says that must be his trait, and since the color is black it must be the trait that blocked Mi-kyung's vision, and he hits him on the back of the head with a club sending him flying into a wall. He starts panting asking Mi-kyung if she's okay, but she yells telling him to watch out, and as Chul-jun leaps at him from behind with a surprise attack he narrowly evades it, but it cracks his helmet, and Sung-ho is surprised that it had that much power when it barely grazed him. Chul-jun recognizes him saying that he's going to make him a cripple today, and Sung-ho is in disbelief saying that his trait's too overpowered early on, and Chul-jun tells his boys to get ready as they're going to go all out. In-hek says of course, and starts to release lightning, and he walks at Sung-ho saying that this is what he deserves, and Sung-ho wonders what to do, and debates if he really has to use the dimensional gate. In-hek starts to run in, but so does Dingo as he flies in from the alley bouncing off the wall, and bites onto his arm, and Hyunjin says that this isn't appropriate in the middle of the day, and if they don't want to make a scene he suggests they get lost right now. As he's calling the police he asks them what they think of his offer, and Chul-jun says that they'll retreat for today. Hyunjin says that he can't believe that they're all so cocky when they're so scrawny, then asks Sung-ho if he's okay. Mi-kyung teleports off the roof asking him if he's hurt anywhere, and she quickly runs over, and grabs his helmet asking if he's actually okay, and Hyunjin asks if he wants to piggyback, and Sung-ho wonders why To and Paek are overlapping with these people in his mind. Mi-kyung says they need to go to the hospital, but he says that he's fine, and he doesn't have time to lay down. Then he asks Hyunjin if it's okay if he could take Mi-kyung into his group, and Hyunjin says that if she's okay with it it's just they have a connection now he'd be happy too. She says that if he's okay with her she'd be thrilled, and Sung-ho says he needs to go take care of something, and he'll see them next time, and as he walks away Hyunjin and Mi-kyung wonder what's wrong with him. After he returned home he decided to organize his thoughts, and he brought forward his plan for the second stage of prep, and his hasty departure was unavoidable, and seeing the two of them made him feel like he can confide in them about his ability, but that choice was impossible. To maximize the privilege of having the gate he had to level up skills, and farm, and to crush everybody with that power a realization struck him that it was even more apparent when he was fighting Chul-jun's group. If he prepares for the apocalypse according to his plan there will be a level gap of 3 or more which will make the monsters that respawn around him stronger, and it'll be harder to party up with the two of them. He continued his work, and finally he finished installing the wood-burning stove in his hideout, and he says now he can sleep well at night even if it gets really cold, and he can tell Dingo likes it because Dingo falls asleep right by the fire. Like the video or Dingo gets it. Sung-ho says all that's left is to install the goods that will arrive soon without any issue, and the initial hideout setup will be almost complete, and since he's come this far he might as well pull an all-nighter tonight. It doesn't tell us how long it's been, but later on the news we see that there's an update on the asteroid, and NASA has announced that Yunjianbai has entered the midpoint of the solar system, but they are still closely monitoring its trajectory, and they also announced that the meteorite was split by Jupiter's gravity, creating a variable in their calculations, and in response Thomas Chandler, the head of the observation department, stated that the two resulting parts are Yunjianbai Alpha and Beta, but they have no chance of approaching Earth. Sung Ho says now he understands what happened, and on 5 days before the apocalypse Yunjianbai Beta was the first to fall, landing near a Russian ship, and because of the resulting tsunami the ship was swept ashore at the port of a Korean, and that's how zombies first appeared in their country, and the background story felt a little strange, but now he understands why. Next on the news, following this shootout, one tech has reportedly not left his office residence for a week, and in response the opposition party leaders issued a joint statement announcing they have agreed to hold a hearing, and some are saying this is related to the rumors about the Awakeners and the disaster. Sung Ho says it actually is the end of the world, and the only good thing is that the media has taken an interest, so it's just become harder for Awakeners to commit crimes, and he wonders what the community's reaction is like. We see people talking about how they were going to rob a bank tomorrow, and some other crazy shit. Sung Ho says there are some crazy opinions, but that's about it, but something catches his eye as he recognizes one of the names as My Dream, and he was a player quite famous for being kind to noobs, and someone he had played with quite a few times. Turns out that he built a bunker, and Sung Ho says that if it wasn't for the portly he might have been tempted, but there's no news that his veteran friends had joined him, so he won't be the one to initiate contact, but he'll bookmark it for now, and then says that it's time for him to go finish construction of the second shelter. The next day outside, Sung Ho wonders if it's really possible to pull 2 all-nighters in a row, and he feels like he'll pass out the moment he closes his eyes, and seeing how well the exterior turned out gives him a lot of energy, and now it's time for the main event. Using the electricity generated by the solar panels is a lot more complicated than you would think, and starting with converting DC to AC he had to go through several wiring processes to make it compatible with electronic devices, and we see him plugging in his phone saying that he hopes this works on the first try. And it does, and he says this is great, and he starts shaking, and finally the foundation for survival in his other world is properly set, and as he's made a pretty nice little room he felt a rush of dopamine for the first time in a while, and for good reason. The place where he gathered the stones, after digging further there was a mineral harder and sharper than obsidian, and he discovered emerus, but right now it's pretty much useless, and it's better than nothing. He says he'll install the LED lights later tonight, and before he goes to sleep he needs to organize the food supplies, and then hears Dingo barking, and wondering what's going on, and he heads outside with his gear asking Dingo what's wrong. And what he sees surprises him, and there's a red wolf, and a bunch of other wolves with it, and Sung Ho says that he doesn't know why creatures that live in high altitude areas are here, but judging by how angry Dingo is this must be the ones who killed his mother. He tells Dingo to be quiet, but of course Dingo can only see red, and Sung Ho says that he's in trouble, and frankly he has no way of defeating them right now, and if he moves from here to get a proper weapon he'll be showing his back, and they'll tear him limb from limb. In that case there's only one option left, and the solution he came up with was to make the alpha leave this place, and have the rest of the wolf pack leave on their own, and there's a reason he judged that to be possible. That's because they are very cautious, and only after the alpha wolf makes the first move will they feel it safe, and he says they have a habit of launching a coordinated attack, and like any wolf they're vulnerable to strong scents. Fortunately in his pocket he has the pepper spray he used on the kobold, and so in other words he can just use this to spray on the alpha, and while it won't kill it it'll drive it out of his shelter, but if it decides to charge at him he'll be the first to go down. And he doesn't know if there's a way for him to stop it, and hit it with the spray, and then it clicks. He says that he doesn't know if it's possible, and theoretically it is, but he has no choice because if he backs down here the shelter he worked so hard to build will be destroyed. He yells at the alpha, and rears back his hand before throwing his knife forward, and the alpha dodges the attack, and starts growling at him before leaping straight towards him, as it flies and he gets close, and Sung Ho opens the portal, then closes it in an instant causing it to hit its head. He then pulls out the spray, and starts letting that thing rip, and the alpha begins spitting up bile, and Sung Ho runs in saying not yet as he grabs it by the neck, and stabs it straight in the eye. It then distances itself from him, and starts running away causing the pack to follow, and Sung Ho sits down, and sighs out of relief saying that he thought he was going to die of fear. Dingo runs over, and Sung Ho tells him to stop being a baby, and just wait a little longer as he'll definitely avenge his mother. He headed back, and finished organizing his basement, and he went out to the hardware store and pharmacy as he wanted to at least finish the minimal defenses before going to sleep. He's now gone 68 hours without sleep, and he says that in a way he got off easy, and as if they had been werewolves there would have been no answer at all. Thinking about it again, he realizes he was complacent, and he only thought about the nearby living monsters that he had seen while completely ignoring the variables, and since it's come to this after conducting more surveys with the drone, it'd be better to expand the land and build a shelter, and that way he can secure more space for farming and storing supplies. Hyunjun spots him across the road and starts calling out to him, but Sung-ho is still thinking about it, saying he needs to build a moat to establish a second line of defense, but also adding more beacons to expand the reception range of his infrared laser. Hyunjun calls out to him once more. Sung-ho asks what he's doing here. Hyunjun says he wanted to ask him the same thing, and Sung-ho tells him he came to buy something. Hyunjun asks if he came to buy some weapons too, but Sung-ho asks why he would even buy that at a hardware store. Hyunjun says he's not the one doing it, but one of his team members wants to buy them. And we get a little recap. It turns out Hyunjun found his member hanging around the hardware store but is now stopping her from buying weapons. Hyunjun tells Sung-ho that she just doesn't believe him, and Sung-ho asks why he didn't just show her the initial summary he gave her, and Hyunjun says of course he showed her, but she can't accept the disease itself. Sung-ho then says forget all that, this girl keeps staring at him without saying anything, and she finally speaks, saying that she recognizes him, and he is the owner of the restaurant. Sung-ho says that's right. She asks what happened to him as the atmosphere around him has completely changed. She apologizes, saying she might have been rude, and pulls out her card introducing herself as Jo Soo-yeon, and Sung-ho introduces himself as well, and takes her card only to be surprised that she is a certified doctor. After learning that she was one just like he did with Hyunjun and Mi-kyung, he taught her the basic knowledge about the game, and she says that she honestly doesn't really understand because if you approach game settings scientifically there's no answer. Sung-ho says that it's a game after all, and she tells him that's the part she understands, but there's more she needs to know, and Sung-ho asks like what, and she says she knows he's an awakener. Sung-ho asks why she thinks so, and she says that it's just his explanations have the certainty, and as she listened that thought suddenly occurred to her, and Sung-ho laughs, saying there's no way, and says once more a woman's intuition is terrifying. Soo-yeon thanks him, saying it was a huge help, and that he feels very trustworthy, and Hyunjun wonders what the difference between the two of them is, and she asks if he's really that clueless, saying they have different depths. He then tells Sung-ho that she wants to be friends with him. The next day we see Sung-ho excited in his bunker, saying that he stuck a spear blade on a shaft, and it looks really good. With this his main tool setup is complete. He tells Dingo that today's the day they'll go avenge his mother, and even if it's not really revenge, if someone discovers their hideout they have to find and kill them as soon as possible, saying surely he understands that he's going to be pulling his weight today. He even got Dingo a little gas mask, and they head out to their hideout, but Sung-ho is confused as there are only 4 wolves, and he doesn't even see the alpha, and says now he understands as he looks through his monocular, and sees the owlbear ripping apart the alpha. He says as long as he doesn't get too close his neighbor sure is reliable, and a maned wolf pack that's lost its alpha is very easy to deal with, and it's as if their brains have been removed from their heads, making their coordination terrible, and it allows him to defeat them one by one. He shoots one with a net launcher, and the wolf begins screaming, and Sung-ho says he'll put it out of its misery immediately, killing it, and he gains 3 points for this. The other wolves spot him running away from it. They start chasing, but one takes the initiative, and leaps straight at him, and he pepper sprays it as the other 2 get on both flanks, and Sung-ho rears back his spear, and stabs one straight through the chest while the other attacks him from behind. He realizes it, but decides to trust Dingo as Dingo comes in headbutting that thing, and Sung-ho tells Dingo good job, and that from now on he'll finish the rest as he just needs to make sure they're dead. He gains more points, and levels up to 5, and now additional effects have been added to his trait. He wonders what this is now, and we see that he has added abilities of transparency, which means the door can become invisible to others, and projection, which shows the scenery beyond, and he can hear sounds from the projected location too. Sung-ho says that's cool, and opens it immediately only to be more amazed as he can see inside of his house, and he wonders if the transparency is automatically enabled, and says this is insane. He was worried what would happen if a dungeon gate that looks similar to a dimensional door appeared later, but this eliminates the inconvenient parts, and compensates for a lot of the weaknesses. If this effect came at level 5, that means more effects will probably be added, and he never thought about the level as he wasn't sure if the skill would grow or not. But if that's the case, he now thinks that he should pay even more attention to the events that will occur soon, but before that he has more to do, and he needs to bury these wolves before they turn into creepers. Oh man. We back in the mine. We get a 2-day time skip since the wolf subjugation. During that time he did a lot of things. First, back in the other world, he conducted another ecological survey. Within a radius of about 1 kilometer only various animals were present. He confirmed again that there were no monsters. Then he obtained information that there was a goblin nest 3 kilometers away. A nest of that size probably has hobgoblins, so it would be tough for him to do right now. After gaining confidence in his safety, we see him with a chainsaw saying that it's time to begin. He started clearing the surrounding bushes and trees to flatten the area to transform the hideout into a shelter. With Dingo's help they made a large circle 30 meters in diameter. I wonder if he could fit a mini excavator through his portal. But he says that he planned to set up 2 layers of circular barbed wire fencing and dig a moat outside. He's looking down at it saying that it probably needs to go 2 meters lower. Of course, all while monitoring the situation in real time through the dimensional gate. In reality, he started by buying various materials from distant hardware stores. He visited a large home improvement store for a commercial grade tool set. Then on the way home he checked out Cheljan's hideout. He rented a motorcycle and a mini excavator. Holy shit, I spoke it into existence. Also, thanks to Jadok, he has been injecting a certain amount of poison daily for resistance, and it finally accumulated enough to use on a weapon. Right now though he's extremely flustered as he's reading a post saying this is bullshit. Dream says that one joined his group. Sung Ho wonders if that means the shootout, and the government's media control, and the president's behavior of not leaving the residence are all just coincidence. But no matter how much he thinks about it, it doesn't make sense. The reason he judged that one would be beside the president wasn't just because he guessed he would know about the event, but one was an item collector who definitely would have demanded a giant shelter in exchange for providing info. Among the candidates worth cooperating with, he assumed he would choose the president who had the highest authority. The possibility of it being a bluff is a little high, but why would Dream do that? It's confusing, but dragging it out won't solve the problem. If one really joined Dream's side, he'll need to change his plans too. Sung Ho heads to a PC cafe creating a fake ID for the game, and a VR ID. Messages Dream asking if they can hop in chat. Sung Ho says if he doesn't reply soon he'll have to postpone it. But Dream says not many people know his ID. Asking where they should go. Sung Ho wonders if maybe he's actually unemployed. Then tells him to go to the White Room. They continue their little conversation. And Sung Ho says it's time to see if he's the real deal or a fake. We see Dream entering the White Room. He thanks him for the invitation but tells him this is not very pleasant. Sung Ho asks why. Dream tells him that he even came into VR chat at his request, yet he's still maintaining the unknown alias. But also has a ridiculous mask. Sung Ho apologizes saying that he won't gain anything by being chummy with him. Dream asks if that means he's a veteran. Sung Ho says he could be, but he also couldn't be. Dream says very well, he'll ask 3 questions. If he answers them correctly he'll acknowledge him. Sung Ho says bet. Then Dream asks what's the maximum vertical jump height of a werewolf. Sung Ho says 3 meters. Dream asks about the owlbear's weakness. Sung Ho says surely he's kidding him, it's light. Then Dream asks about the evolution stages and forms of zombies. Sung Ho says that zombies don't have infection abilities, instead they consume nutrients. When nutrients accumulate they turn into ghouls, but before that some of them become enhanced zombies. Dream says that's good. Then ask how many events they're meant to happen in reality. Sung Ho says that he doesn't intend to tell him that. And Dream laughs saying he's indeed one of the veterans. Sung Ho tells him to shut up, and that this seems to be enough proof so to call one over because if it's real he'll join too. Dream says that fortunately he can't do that. Sung Ho asks why not. Dream says by the way the weather is really nice today, and he has a feeling something is about to happen. Sung Ho says that it feels like he's spouting nonsense to buy time. Then he realizes it's saying that Dream must have been tracking his IP the entire time as Dream tells him goodbye. Some men enter the PC cafe wearing suits. A man tells the others to block the door. The woman tells him to charge his time to use it, but he says that's not it. They didn't come here to play games, and they came to find someone. He looks into her eyes telling her to cooperate. She gets mind controlled saying of course. He says judging by the situation he's a mental type, and if that's the case he needs to act fast. When he's caught he'll become a puppet. He heads into the bathroom, and uses the dimensional gate. One by one the man asks everyone in the room if they are unknown. After checking everyone he realizes there's only one place left, and heads into the bathroom. He tells Unknown to stop joking, and come out already. Then wonders if maybe he's a stealth type ability user. He's dealt with them before, so he knows that you splash water to find spots where the moisture remains uneven, or if you manage to grab them somehow it's instant game over for them. Sung-ho says that he's glad he summited flat against a wall. As that was too close, he almost got caught. He realizes that he must not be a stealth type user, and pulls out his radio saying that he's a movement type, so they need to search the area now, and that this is a big fish. If they capture him alive, he'll get them whatever they want. Sung-ho says that it sure is bitter, and even though Dream was wealthy in reality, and a gentleman in game, to see himself trying to make slaves is a sorry sight. He then thanks Dream as he coats his spear with poison. I honestly didn't know that was Dream, my bad. But Sung-ho says he has resolved himself many times, but he was still hesitating. But thanks to him now his thoughts are clear. His own standards, he will thoroughly respond to fire with fire. Dream wonders who the hell the veteran is meant to be. Even if his skill is a movement type like he guessed, a veteran with tons of accumulated playtime definitely has more tricks up his sleeve. As soon as he says this, Sung-ho appears behind him, dashing forward. Dream notices, but it's too late as he gets cut on the leg, instantly getting inflicted with a poison. Dream says that he's unknown before Sung-ho slams his face into the glass, saying he never told him he could turn around. Then asks how it is, as the poison must be spreading through his body. Dream says something else, and Sung-ho tells him to stop talking. Since the apocalypse hasn't begun yet, the tutorial hasn't started. Meaning the murder system also isn't unlocked. He cuts a gun off his hip, saying that even if he kills him, he wouldn't get any penalties. Dream then stops talking, and Sung-ho says that he's a semi-veteran, so he should understand what he means. While he's conscious now, his body won't move. He then asks why the hell he's selling out Survivor 1, and targeting innocent people. Then tells him that the way he looks right now is less like a human, and more like a monster that's nice to farm. Dream calls him a bastard as Sung-ho starts stealing his things, telling him to think of it as the price for trying to trick him, and turn him into his slave. Next time, it won't be just a warning, as he'll really kill him. He then hits him over the back of the head with his knife. He says that before the group arrived, he escaped the cafe, and returned home, going straight to the other world, pulling out the wallet and gun that he got from him. He says the first thing he'll check is the ID. His name is Kwon Kyungjin, he is 38 years old, and he runs a golf club as the owner. From there, he controls 3 bunkers, but also is a complete womanizer. He's also apparently got good skill based on his total playtime. He'd been conducting experiments using his skill mind control. Sung-ho says that this should be all the useful info he's got, but his skills don't necessarily improve just because of long playtime, because if it did, what about him? Then he thinks about it, saying that since the goal of the game was always survival, his skill is pretty much cheat tier, but only for veterans. He then decides to keep the hypothesis as likely until he can check another veteran's skill. Right now, with a game like Apocalypse approaching, there's only one thing he can be certain of. Just becoming an awakener already improved his physical abilities beyond normal humans. Of course, his recent training also helped too. He says the next time he practices shooting, he'll do it without a full mag. He then hears his notifications going off over, and over, and over, and he looks over wondering what's going on. He sticks his head through the portal, browsing his computer, and is surprised. As the second event has now struck, Sung-ho says that this is good. He hops in the whip, and starts driving. He wonders why it has to be so far away. Then he sees an update about someone spotting a goblin near the reservoir. He quickly pulls over to the side of the road, and hops out. He tells Dingo that they're going to be hunting goblins now. The moment he saw the post, he grabbed the whip, and went straight towards the mountains for 2 reasons. First, with the issue being this big, the police will obviously start blocking the area off. Second, goblins are roaming monsters, and they would definitely build a temporary nest under the hobgoblin's command. He asks Dingo to catch their scent quickly so they can follow it. Dingo barks, and then starts sniffing the ground, and looks up, starting to lead Sung-ho. Sung-ho is surprised that he caught it so quickly, but is proud of him. Dingo starts hauling cheeks, and jumps through some bushes as Sung-ho quickly follows behind. He calls his dog an idiot, and asks if there's not a better path. Dingo barks, and what he sees up ahead are cops laying on the floor, and goblins all around. Sung-ho tells himself to calm down, walking over to one of the policemen, checking his breathing, saying that he's still alive. Since there are no clear wounds, that means he was only hit with paralysis poison. But he wonders who took his gun, or maybe he got deployed suddenly, and never had one. He lines them up side by side, saying if they rest for about 30 minutes, They'll be okay. He then checks the goblins, saying that they're riddled with bullets. He wonders why the gun was taken in this situation. Then thinks about it, saying there might be a gold goblin in the group. If that's the case, there's no way he can let anyone else take it. With that decision made, he used the cop's phone to call for backup. He left a note with their exact location, and instructions to bury the goblin corpse so it wouldn't rot. Since monsters had already spread across social media, hiding them from now on is pointless. From now on, it's a race against time. He tells Dingo that he's counting on him. Elsewhere at the mountain we see a man blocking an attack, and he swings at the goblin who backsteps it. He then asks his captain if this is right that he the non-awakener is the tanker. The dude tells him that he has no choice as his specialization is psychokinesis, which has a pretty long cast time. But not to worry. As he throws 3 rocks forward taking out one of the goblins, he says he'll definitely provide cover. The tanker asks if he's certain the other party members are on their way. He tells him that they already reached the mountain, however they said that they couldn't climb up easily as the police were stopping them. The tanker then wonders if they should retreat too, but the dude tells him to think of it as an opportunity. And that they've seen these goblins in the game plenty of times, and they're all without their main weapons, and paralysis poison. I thought everybody who played the game awakened. Maybe that wasn't true. The guy says even so. He's having a hard time, and his captain tells him not to panic, and just keep doing what he's doing. If they can deal with these guys, and capture the hobgoblin group that left the main pack, they'll gain a tremendous advantage. And if he understands, they should stop whining, and concentrate. A club flies in from left field, and distracts him, hitting him in the arm. He drops to his knees saying that he can't believe a mere goblin managed to figure out the counter strategy. He wonders what to do now as the goblins start taking space, and they charge at the 2 of them to finish the job, but an arrow flies in, hitting one of them in the head. Then 2 more follow with another headshot, and 1 to the chest. The tanker looks over confused, wondering where the arrow suddenly came from. We see Sung Ho inside of his bunker saying that he doesn't know if this was necessary to use his 3 arrows, but says that he paid a fair price. Thanks to them he confirmed the information that the awakeners couldn't climb up, and he was able to encounter a group of goblin whose forces have weakened. From now on he must go quickly. The method he planned for dealing with the goblin group was simple. First he would draw the goblin's aggression. When the enraged goblin approaches the gate as he was using soda cans to distract them, he would stab it from behind. Because to the monsters the gate was invisible. As soon as the goblin started screaming from the pain, using the dimensional gate as a wall, he would remove the spear, and erase all evidence of the attack. Then the hobgoblin, who has high perception stats, will see only its subordinate fallen, and command the remaining 3 goblins. He will take advantage, and cleave them in one go just like he has done many times before. As he instantly kills all 3 of them, he says that everything is going according to plan so far. Now he needs to respond according to the behavioral patterns of the ones left. What he sees surprises him as the gold goblin is running away from the hobgoblin. He says that since it has come to this he will have to gamble. The hobgoblin charges in, and he says this is insane, but he has no choice. As he blocks the attack with his machete, it still sends him flying into a tree. He starts to spit up blood, saying that the shock was greater than he expected. If he loses consciousness, it is all over here. The hobgoblin goes to finish the job, but his skill will to survive activates. We see his eyes glowing golden as the hobgoblin strikes the tree. Sung Ho dashes past him, and pulls out his pistol. He puts 2 shots into the back of his head like YNW melee, and opens his gate quickly. He takes the loot, and throws it into his bunker, saying that with this the first phase of farming is complete. The hobgoblin starts to charge towards him, so he raises his pistol, putting 1 into his shoulder, and 1 into his bicep. It drops to the ground. He asks the hobgoblin if he really thought he would win just because it hit him. But now it is his turn. As he quickly starts cutting it into pieces, successfully killing it. He levels up, gains 18 points, and the skill terrain sense. He starts to sigh out of relief now that it is over. The skill allows him to see, and sense, and intuitively respond to the terrain within his field of view. He says that this is a pretty useful skill to get in the beginning, which isn't bad. He also gets some gauntlets that give him handiwork +2. He says this time too the items he has equipped turned into actual items. I guess last time he already had the watch equipped. That was my bad. We hear another goblin scream, and a man saying that they are here. Sung Ho turns, wondering if the search party already made it here, but says that he took what he needed, so it is time for him to stay in his bunker until the search is over. The next day in his bunker, Dingo starts licking him, and he wakes up looking at his clock, asking if he really slept for an entire day. From now on, unless it is an extreme situation, he should refrain from activating will to survive. But before he heads outside he needs to check the loot he got from the goblin. Sung-ho goes to the loot, and says that as expected, gold goblins really are different. He got a revolver, saying that it's impressive, but he didn't know that he'd be seeing a knife with permanent invariance. It's made of mithril, and it's not affected by the disease, but he wonders how a goblin of all things has an item that costs 100 points in the shop. He looks closely at the surface, and says that it's a little bumpy. Then he says to wait a minute, because the goblins in this world carry metal weapons, and considering the level of their civilization, there's no way they can make them themselves. Then he begins to wonder if maybe some kind of mutation occurred. He says this might just be nothing more than speculation, but he'll have a chance to check out the items. He pulls out some shade grapes which enhance night vision. He says this explains how the diurnal goblins were able to move freely at night. Lastly, he opens his status window, and we see that his stats are pretty decent, and he has 77 points to spend. He says that his growth rate is way faster than it was in the game. That wraps up everything he needed to check in this world. He then opens the gate. As his signal connects, he gets flooded with messages. He wonders what's going on, as it's from Hyunjun, Mi-kyung, and even Soo-yeon. He says that he's never been this popular before, but he should go head to the fitness center. He does so, telling Hyunjun that he's here. Hyunjun and Mi-kyung quickly run over, and Hyunjun says that he was really worried. Sung-ho then asks who that is behind them all. Hyunjun says that he should introduce himself as they're his party members, and that surely they all know Sung-ho as the snack shop owner. One of the men introduces himself as Lee Kyung-hoon, and the woman introduces herself as Kim Bora. Sung-ho introduces himself too. Then he asks Hyunjun where the last one is. Hyunjun says that person went to the big camping gear discount store asking Sung-ho if he knows about it. Sung-ho says that he didn't know there was a place like that nearby. Mi-kyung says that it opened just a month ago, and everything's super modern. Hyunjun then asks him if he checked everything about yesterday's incident, and the news. Sung-ho says of course as he watched it all on YouTube. The doctor who dissected the goblin found on the mountain warned everyone to prepare for the apocalypse, and the president held a national security meeting, and announced that they would confirm the whereabouts of the survival life creator, and listen to the awakened one's opinions. Hyunjun then asks Sung-ho what he's planning to do now. Sung-ho asks what he's talking about. Hyunjun says that since Sung-ho knows a lot they wanted some advice. Kyung-hoon asks Hyunjun if he's serious, and saying that he gave him advice already that goblins only give points anyways, and even if an awakened killed one the best they go from level 1 to 2 so he should keep stocking up on supplies like he's doing now. Sung-ho asks what the hell this dude's even talking about, telling Kyung-hoon that he's wrong. Kyung-hoon then asks if he even played the game. Sung-ho says no, but if you look around on the community a bit, and Kyung-hoon says exactly trusting in the community too much isn't good, asking if he understands. Bora then asks Kyung-hoon, saying that she's been curious for a while when exposed to zombie spores. She wants to know who turns into zombies, and who survives, and if there are conditions that determine whether you turn after infection. He says that at the very least anyone who has come into contact with an awakened should be fine. She asks him to explain more, and he gets a little angry saying that surely they already know why he awakened. That's because he played the game and shorties made contact with the system, meaning even though they're not awakened since they've interacted with him, they're safe. Bora says that when he says it like that it sounds convincing, and that she'll stick with him from now on. Kyung-hoon laughs telling her to trust him, but Mi-kyung says that she also has a question. She then says the tutorial was super hard, asking if he cleared it. He ignores her, telling her not to worry as he'll make sure to protect all of them, and Sung-ho just wonders what this guy's deal is. He admits that it's a somewhat credible hypothesis, but there's no evidence anywhere that awakened people can be exposed to spores, and stay fine. He sighs saying it's hopeless, and that Hyunjun probably called him because he doesn't trust this guy either. He decides to get up for now as he doesn't want to give direct info to someone like him. He tells Hyunjun that he's got some plans, and he'll contact him again after. After leaving the club he revised the list of places to farm before the disease arrives, which would be the camping store that Hyunjun mentioned, and removing the convenience store. By the time he arrived in front of his house he was able to meet Soo-yeon, who had been waiting for him. She says that she has something to show him. She came to give him something, asking if he's okay to stay for a bit. He says that he is, and asks what it is. She says that it's a pack of painkillers and antibiotics that he can't buy without a prescription. He asks if she's really giving this to him, and she says why not. If she runs out she can just forge a prescription and make more, and she tells him her address, saying that it's also written in the pouch. He asks why she's giving him that too, and she says that it's a give and take relationship, as they need to know each other's locations. He says if that's the case then it's fine. She says that she's going to go stop by and talk to Hyunjun, so she'll be off now. He tells her to be careful, and she tells him that he has to make sure to pay for the medicine, but also not to forget the address. She walks away and says that she's very aggressive. After the second meeting with Soo Yun, time quickly passed again, and during that time he visited various places, but he bought many items and equipment, and in this world he created a storage facility with sandwich panels and started loading items into it. After he received the mini excavator he'd reserved, he began doing construction work on the side. Meanwhile, the world grew chaotic. On TV, people were arguing the entire time until an emergency meeting was called by the UN. Articles flooded in about the US president planning to visit Korea, and sensing something strange that NASA didn't predict. Starting with Yunjambi Beta, Yunjambi Alpha was announced to be coming to Earth. 4 whole days passed, and now he is at the port where the final event, the Russian ship, will be taking place. After confirming that nobody was at the harbor, he entered an abandoned building to prepare. He opened his gate inside of it, and said the reason he came here despite the probability of becoming a zombie was simple. It is to obtain extra guns from the Russian vessel. The zombie spores, which are pathogens in the form of particle beams, all have strong permeability, and is not something that can be avoided. Becoming a zombie now or becoming one 5 days later didn't feel like much of a difference to him as someone without a family. Of course, there is the option of living in the other world with Dingo, but what meaning would that have as a human? With this though, his preparations are complete, and that doesn't mean he has the slightest intention of dying, he just made a different choice from others. High risk, high reward, and that's what life is about in the end. He's reading some old patch notes, talking about a bunch of things such as the 10-point weapon being provided during the tutorial, but also how they nerfed the zombies, and something about the diversification of point acquisition methods. All of this will start from Yunjambi Beta's arrival. He's a little surprised, saying this is as if the admin knew the apocalypse was coming to reality. A beep then starts going off on his phone, and he realizes that it started. He reads that the Yunjambi Beta is going to impact near the South Sea, exactly outside the port where he is. The sirens start to flare, and the tide on the beach starts to recede, just like your hairline as the boats begin to get beached. But there's one vessel off in the distance, being carried by the waves, which is formed into a mini tsunami. It starts sweeping the city, and Sung-ho says this shit is crazy. He says that dealing with zombies and monsters is much better than having to try to deal with natural disasters, because that just looks hopeless to try to survive. His hands begin shaking, and he says that he needs to move quickly. As we see, he has all of his equipment ready. He suits up and pushes his boat, saying that he needs to move as fast as possible before the government agents arrive. He hops into the water, just driving to the vessel. He ties himself up, but we see his hands shaking hella bad. He then looks at the side, saying that it seems that awakeners don't become zombies, just as Kyung-hoon said. He doesn't even feel a prickling sensation. But for him, good is good, so it's time to head up. When he does, he spots the zombified sailors, and greets them, asking if they've been well. The zombies in the game were a bit special. According to the game settings, instead of not having the ability to infect with the virus, they regard everything as prey, but also have a habit of getting stronger the more nutrients they absorb. He charges in with a shield, knocking one of them to the floor before raising his mace, and he starts bashing its skull in. Before quickly taking out the other, he wonders if they don't realize how bad they've nerfed the zombies. He gains 4 points, saying originally even with an iron weapon, he would have to land at least 2 more hits to kill them. Even so, he can't let his guard down like with the orcs. As a veteran player, that kind of mistake is enough to only happen once. He heads inside, saying that the zombies sure are swarming, but he'll focus on clearing the ones in the hallway. He gains 4 more points because he one-shots both of them, and he says that he needs to go to where the probability of finding the pistol is high, which is the wheelhouse. He then hears a gunshot, asking if there's still a survivor on board. That means that even if a non-awakener isn't in contact with an awakener, and gets exposed to zombie spores, it means they can randomly survive, and he needs to save them first. That way he can get definite info. When he does get there though, he sees that he was a little too late, because the gunshot wasn't for the zombie, but the dude blew his own brains out while holding a photo of his wife. Sung-ho realizes that if he was just a little faster he could have saved the guy, and he reaches over, saying this won't be much comfort, but he closes his eyes, and thanks him for helping him, and even lays him out in a proper position. He then walks out of the boat, saying that things like this will probably happen a lot after the apocalypse, and of course there will be times when he has to kill people to survive too. He then hears another boat as he's cutting his rope, and he turns, saying that he can't believe there's someone just as crazy as him about farming. They don't even exchange glances, and just ride by each other, Sung-ho says that he should just consider this practice because half-hearted hypocrisy is disgusting. The next day at dawn the news is asking where the survival life developer is. Sung-ho says that looking at the actions shown by the president after obtaining the proof with the zombies, it's basically confirmed that his thinking is similar to his. It's time for him to do his part. Since he's giving it, he might as well include various information. He starts to call into the tip line, and a man introduces himself as Lee Woo-bom, administrator of the countermeasures headquarters. Sung-ho says he knows the exact time of D-Day. Woo-bom tells him to please unblock the ID. Sung-ho asks if the goblin had gunshot wounds on his shoulder. Woo-bom now realizes that he's serious, and Sung-ho says he doesn't intend to speak for long. The exact time of D-Day is July 20th at 1300, and a package will arrive around this afternoon, and he hopes he puts it to good use, and wishes him the fortune of war. Sung-ho says that the president's decisiveness was impressive, and tons of the people on the forums are talking about the power in the internet getting cut. Sung-ho says of course since he can only verify things through social media, he can't say for sure if it's accurate. He then hears military people talking outside over a megaphone, telling the citizens to secure 4 days worth of food and water, and return to their families immediately. All business activities need to be stopped, and they should return home. This is an official statement regarding the current situation made on July 20th. Sung-ho says the response is perfect, and almost makes him regret not warning them sooner. If he had known they'd handle things this well, he would have taken the risk when his trait first showed up, and done this from the beginning, but he says that wouldn't have the disaster anyways, and he should not dwell on what-ifs. Not forget the promise he made to himself that day, he's not a hero, he's just a dude. Since the lockdowns made it impossible to do anything in the real world, he decided to stay in the other world a while longer. 3 days before D-Day, he finished digging the moat. He says at this rate though it's going to take a couple more. He sorted through the videos he had saved up, such as cooking videos, and farming basics, like genuinely just sorting the videos. 2 days before D-Day, he started scouting with Dingo, and he discovered that the sun apples had fully grown in just a month. He needs to verify it further, but maybe the entire forest is enchanted fertile land. The next day, a problem arose as 2 of his sweet potato jellies were missing. There was also a dried up grape on the floor, and he asked Dingo if he did this. Dingo shakes his head no, and Sung-ho tells him there's no lying allowed, causing him to roll on his back and whimper. Sung-ho says judging by the reaction, it probably wasn't him. He decides to check the CCTV. He sits down, and goes through it. He's surprised by what he sees as a group of beetles going through the doggy door, taking his sweet jellies, and leaving a grape as repayment. The little guy even bows to him, and Sung-ho's surprised that it's so smart. It's also super cute. He says he's really wanted to track it down, and see it for himself, but for now he's just gonna lock the doggy door. Dingo wonders what he's doing, and Sung-ho says he has guests coming over today. As he heads back to his house, he thanks everybody for coming. We see it's Hyunjun's group. He says he's glad they made it even with the lockdowns. Sung-ho asks who the man sitting with Hyunjun is. Hyunjun says he's the last member of their party, so they brought him along to introduce him. The dude introduces himself as Yuhyun, and he says that he awakened but he turned the game off right away, so he doesn't know much about it. But in the real world, he has a major in electrical engineering, which is something he's confident in. Sung-ho says that's good enough for him, and introduces himself. Hyunjun told him a lot about him, and to treat him comfortably. Sung-ho says that since they're short on time, he wants to end the intros here, and share with info they have one by one, telling Hyunjun to go for it first. Hyunjun's a little confused because he's slow, but says that he was on the phone with his ex-wife when the line suddenly went dead. He was worried about his daughters, so he drove over to check on them, but on the way back he saw something. They were setting up barricades on the highway, and from what he'd heard they were evacuating citizens living near one of the chemical complexes. Sung-ho then asks Soo-yeon, and she says that she was with her party members the whole time, and she only has a little bit of info. They built a shelter in the citizens' park. Hyunjun asks if that's even possible, and she says that it's hard to believe, but she saw it with her own eyes, yet still doubts it. Sung-ho then asks Mi-kyung, and she says that she was at the mart with Yuhyun, and they overheard something. They said high-ranking officials who oppose the president's decision have been detained. Sung-ho says that this is actually better than he thought. Now he knows what the president intends to do, and can confirm that the end is coming. If you're wondering why he's asking them for info one by one, it's simple. To make someone understand, you need the corresponding reasoning and information. Revealing that he's a veteran of the game would make persuading them easier, but there were risks involved, and he has a specific order in mind. He tells them all to listen carefully, as it seems the president is aiming for a controlled apocalypse. They're all surprised, asking what he means, and he says surely they find it strange that there are unexplained lockdowns that began on the afternoon of July 16th, and for 4 days all national facilities have been at a standstill. So why else would the government make that choice? Yu Hyun says that makes sense, and Soo Yun does as well, saying that the end is really coming. She says that must mean the government learned the exact day of D-Day, and took action. Sung Ho says that's correct, and if they infer further, it'll probably be July 20th when the control lifts. Yu Hyun and Mi Kyung start panicking, saying they need to go warn their family, and Sung Ho tells them to get a grip. It may sound cruel, but this is a time when individual survival takes precedence over family, and they must not forget that any one of them could become a zombie as soon as tomorrow. But he wants to move on to the main point. The reason he called them here is to share the tutorial strategy guide, as well as information on survival. Hyunjun asks how he knows that, and Sung Ho says it's because he's seen Kimbap's videos, and he's sorry for hiding it until now. He apologizes to Mi Kyung for hiding it, but she says it's fine since she lied to him too about her being an awakened. Sung Ho says that they are free to use the info however they like, but for the tutorial, he begs that they follow the manual faithfully. That night everybody left, and midnight arrived, and he prepared so much over the last 32 days that he couldn't say it was perfect. Furthermore, his selfishness masquerading as necessity might come back to bite him later, but he has no regrets with it. At a nearby mountain, anti-air missiles start flying off, exploding with a meteor. Sung Ho watches it, saying that the end must be unavoidable after all, and it's time for the apocalypse to start. As soon as morning came, the lockdown was lifted, and having finished his basic prep during that time, as he added bulletproof glass and strong wooden doors following his usual morning routine. He injected a small amount of paralyzing poison, then forced himself to exercise to increase his poison resistance. We see him doing 300 one-arm push-ups, then he changed back into his combat suit a little later, and had breakfast with Dingo. He waited for the promised time of 9 o'clock until his lights cut on, and on the TV was one tech giving his speech. Sung Ho says that the national address was nothing short of overwhelming, to the point where he wondered who else could have led them to such a dignified end if not for him. He says he truly hoped the end wouldn't come, but since it's already here he's got to survive as a veteran of the apocalypse, which we saw this little bit from the very beginning. Cool to see it all tie back. 4 hours left until the spores make landfall, and he spent 2 of those hours checking the warehouse where he'd store his farmed items, then setting up the equipment he'll use after the disease, and the training ground before returning to reality. But as soon as he went back, it was just as he expected. It had become a living hell. Look at this chubby naked guy in the street. Of course there was fighting, and brawling, and people unleashing their suppressed desires. The dude says that if they're all gonna die soon, they might as well start getting jiggy with it until he gets hit with a car. As there were people killing others without a shred of guilt. Of course it's Inhik and Cheljin's group. Cheljin says they should just say they got rid of some bad luck, and it's not like they can use this car after the disease hits anyways. He tells Sung Ho to stop watching from the rooftop like a loser, and if he turns into a zombie he'll do him the favor of turning him into points. Sung Ho says this isn't some grand era of romance, wondering what's with the weird declaration of war. A flyer then flies by his head, and he looks up seeing a plane dropping them from above. He says that the government worries about its citizens' safety until the very end, and they're completely different from a guy like him. And if only there were people like them, the apocalypse might even be bearable. But there's nothing he can do as everyone's different. But it's time for him to go, and get ready. 3 minutes left now until the spores make landfall, and with this the reality check is complete. He says he hopes this is enough to use before the disease hits, and surely he's memorized the farming route properly. He looks down at his watch, saying what if he forgets to take off his non-magic metal watch after the disease? Then laughs at himself, saying it's not like he has a safety obsession, as he's done everything he can. From now on all he can do is pray that everything goes exactly according to plan. And as the spores start to land, people in the streets start falling to their knees, being overcome with the virus turning into zombies. Just as Sung Ho said, they're all looking for prey. He starts driving through the street, saying that there's actually fewer zombies than he expected, but now he understands why, as most people spent their last moments with their families. He wonders if there's anyone around who didn't turn into a zombie, but says for now this is actually better because, to be honest, while he's farming they just get in his way to begin with. He stops by the pharmacy first, saying that the shutters aren't down, so this is lucky for him. He smashes the door, and then opens his portal, saying that he needs to move quickly from now on. It takes time for the spores to completely take control of the zombies, so if he can raid the hardware store before then he should be able to avoid any unnecessary fights. As he starts chucking shit through his portal it starts landing beside Dingo, which makes him confused until it starts pelting him. That's a dog pile. Sung-ho says that he's completely emptied out this pharmacy, and looking at his progress so far he can finish this faster than he expected. At least that's what he thought until he got to the hardware store, and saw that it was double cheeked up. He says that he figured something like this might happen, so he brought an oxygen cutter, but this thing is a lot louder than he thought. He hears footsteps saying that even if their ability to track organic matter was nerfed by a patch, the zombies are also coming for him because of how loud the cutter is. Sung-ho says we've already seen it during the Russian ship incident, and we should know that zombies in their early stage before they've absorbed any nutrients are weak. At that level, even after the nerves, even a newbie can deal with them easily as long as they know the weak points. He instantly takes one out as two more charge him from the side. He swings downward on the woman, and then across the face for the man. The difficulty in real life has become lower than it was in the game. He gains 6 points, and he says that earning points is a lot easier, but he doesn't know what to do about this. Normally the standard tactic would be to lure them into an alley, and take them out one by one, but right now his movement is restricted. But since he happens to be carrying an oxygen cutter, he'll just take it in, and kill them all at once. He says he'll only warn them once, that until now the only reason he avoided them was because he didn't want to waste his farming time. He starts cutting off their heads one after the other, and says that it wasn't because he was scared. He pushes them back before even more leap at him. He distances himself, avoiding their attacks, telling them to think carefully because there's someone who dumped over 5,500 hours into that shitty game. Without there being ghouls here there's no way he'd lose to the likes of them when they're not even gathered in a proper swarm. He starts toppling them over one another, and says that it was fun, so consider this his reward. Now that he's got them all together he lights up his cutter, and says that he'll send them off with a bang. Then starts drilling into them. After the big fight with the zombies he finished farming the hardware store, and headed toward the local police station. Unfortunately the armory was already looted. Before he could even be disappointed among the corpses scattered across the parking lot he found one with a backpack, and was able to get exactly what he wanted. Meanwhile by the time he was moving to the 4th location things were still manageable. Thanks to the terrain detection skill he got from the hobgoblin, and the stat boost to perception, and handy work from items he could easily avoid the zombies that were slowly starting to gather, and chase. When he arrives at the motorcycle specialty shop he figured it would be ransacked because people all think the same. He put the one remaining ATV, and various supplies into storage. While checking his condition in the other world he took a short break to clear the debuff effects, saying that the other world is broken. After that he went back to reality thinking about where to farm next. But then as we hear a motorcycle we learn that things aren't going to be as easy as he wanted. As we see Inhek and Skinny saying they finally found him. Inhek says that if he's not an awakened he should act humble, and stay inside like one. Then he's been looking for him for a hot minute. He shoots out an attack towards Sung-ho, but Sung-ho dodges by evading backwards. He says that they're going to see him soon anyways, and that this much is just obsession. He wonders what to do, and opens his gate. Inhek tells Skinny to keep an eye out on the zombies, and Sung-ho says no matter how he does it killing them is simple. Inhek charges into the building asking if he's ready to die. Sung-ho says since the tutorial hasn't started there's no way the system would classify him as a murderer. Even if it did apply, your first kill only results in a warning, so there'd be no problem. Inhek is confused asking where he went, but Sung-ho says it still bothers him. Whether it's okay to kill someone in real life or not. Inhek realizes too late that Sung-ho wasn't awakened as Sung-ho puts him in a chokehold. He tells him to answer quietly asking why he's targeting him. He says it's because he took the girl he was drooling over. Sung-ho asks what he means by took, and Inhek says to be honest that he's already taken her to bed. Sung-ho kicks him in the back telling him this is his last chance to redeem himself. The very least he shouldn't harm innocent people. Inhek laughs saying that's rich coming from someone who came to loot. Also that they're both the same. Selfish trash who only care about themselves as he grabs his crossbow, and shoots it towards Sung-ho. Sung-ho dodges, and says that's true, and now that he hears it he's right. He then thanks him saying that he helped clear his head, and he really is trash just like him. He puts one hand on his face, and the other on his neck. As Inhek is begging for mercy Sung-ho says that he didn't want to admit it, and he snaps his neck. He says he fought over 100 death matches in the game. As we see he gained 50 points. He says killing a person in real life feels worse than he actually imagined. As we see his hands shaking, we hear Skinny screaming as he sees Inhok's corpse. Sung-ho calls him a crybaby, telling him to watch his back. He says even if he's trashed just like them, they're thugs who steal from others without restraint, and only care about satisfying their own desires. Skinny starts getting mauled, begging for help. He cries as he reaches his hand out towards Sung-ho. Sung-ho just watches as they eat him alive, and he says that they are people who deserve to die in the apocalypse. If you've watched till the end, comment, Dragia, to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.